Meeting minutes. Is July 15th also one we got completed? I'm just double checking. I remember seeing the other three.
Yeah, the 15th was the one that you guys, the most recent one you all had to look at.
Oh, okay.
But I had sent it all in that email, all of them.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
You know what, I don't think I printed them out. Just the copies that want to be signed.
Do we have a motion on the meeting minutes or no?
Any executive session, we're doing just
Regular.
Just regular session.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 20th, 2019, June 3rd, 2019, June 7th, 2019, and July 15th, 2019.
I would second that, but June 17th, not June 7th.
Oh, yeah.
I just did that wrong.
Any further discussion? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Public comments? Start with you two ladies.
Okay. I'm here with a compliment and a concern. My compliment is the common is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I think that there are like 10 ladies from the women's club that are watering the flowers, etc. And the businesses around the common have outdone themselves, the church, everything looks beautiful. My concern is the Grove Street extension. Do you know where that is?
I believe I do.
That's that sidewalk between South Street and Common Street.
Yeah.
It used to be a road. Years back, the Barre Business Association got donations to beautify that area. And actually, it now is an eyesore. And I think that the Barre Business Association doesn't exist anymore. From what I've gathered from talking to people, my information could be wrong. So my concern is there's a horticultural club at Quaden, and kids have to earn community service points. And I was just wondering if there was a way that they would work with the town in improving that area. People donated money at the time. There's a plaque there, and I believe if you donated $500 or more, your name went on the plaque. I could be wrong about the amount, but I think I might be right. And it's disheartening to have people donate to improve something and then have the whole rest of the time look beautiful. I mean, flowers in front of the church and listening, and then you have this eyesore. So that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. Have any thoughts on that?
I'm assuming we mean the walkway that was the roadway that's now
That
has
was
chairs.
Walkway
was
with
the
the-
roadway.
I've got to confess, I haven't walked up on the common lately up there through it.
You can see it when you ride by.
Is it,
And it's
is
all
the walkway
overgrown.
having problems, or is it just overgrown with,
It's all overgrown.
it's all overgrown?
It's like a
There's-
7-foot
there's an
wall of
eyesore.
vegetation now.
Really?
Yeah,
So-
so like it kind of separates the two sides of
The
that
two-
section of the
right,
common now,
yes.
because it's literally become a wall of vegetation on both sides of the walkway.
And the walk is just covered with grass growing, and weeds have overtaken the other area. And there's a monument there with names on it of people who donated out of the goodness of their heart. And so if any organization tries to get another area beautified, you're not going to have participation.
Gotcha. Yep.
I would have thought it would have been typical maintenance of the town when they mow the common and things, but perhaps not. I don't know, but certainly if kids have community service hours, the challenge is finding someone that's going to lead them through that. So, just turning the kids loose without some leadership on that would be the issue. So maybe if we had someone that wanted to spearhead that process with labor, we could coordinate that with the school and ask for community service hours, because they're always looking for ways to use hours.
Don't the students have so many public hours that they have to put
Yes,
in?
yeah, they're always looking for a way to do it, so this is, if this is something the kids like, especially if you did reach out to the horticulture club there, they may want to do it. I don't know if we get a teacher to be willing to donate time with them to do that, but maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if they have a teacher that, well, I don't know.
You
The
never know.
curriculum there doesn't really lend towards manual labor trades.
Reading,
Doesn't mean that someone doesn't have that.
Oh, I don't disagree
That's
there.
gotta
I'm
be-
just
right.
saying,
That's be the challenge. is
just
finding-
because it's school, I'm just saying the connection may not actually match up. We
Oh.
have had thoughts
It's been a
about
few
student
years.
volunteers, and it usually falls into a different demographic.
it's been a few years since one of my granddaughters was at Quabbin, but I know when she was there was one teacher that worked in that department, and she would even have the kids come to her home. I believe she was from Hubbardston, and they would do projects and things. So you might find somebody, one for
And that's a
kids.
good point. I maybe the way I said it didn't come off right. I surely didn't mean to think that there aren't teachers that are interested in.
And another thing is,
That.
I don't wanna just comment on the Barry comment, because the lady that takes care of the South Barry comment, I have to give her a lot of credit.
It's always looks so
And she,
perfect.
I don't know if anyone helps her, but. I
There's
always-
a couple, but yes, she does a great job.
Uh-huh.
So
So you would say probably needs mowing, needs weeding, needs
Well, no,
trimming
the
of
mowing's
bushes.
The
done
mowing is done.
By the
It-
DPW,
It
but
needs
that's where they
the
stop.
weeding,
it's more garden
More
specialty
garden work.
than.
Okay.
cleaning it out.
We can't kneel down, we can't get out once we kneel down.
I know this has come before us before from the representative of the Barry Savings Bank, well, whatever they call themselves now. I forget who bought them out, but Fidelity. And we weren't able to accomplish anything since. I would suggest it's something that the Board of Selectmen should bring to the DPW Commission. Because right now, our DPW superintendent is running the Parks and Recs crew and the landscape and the maintenance type. I think we should pursue getting a proposal from a professional to, at least the first time, bring it back to life. And then after that, maybe maintenance. But it's gotten so bad, you need a professional that really knows what they're doing to get in there and just bring it back to life.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can continue to work with volunteers, but if not, we should look every year at budgeting the cost to have that maintained, because, well, the town owns it. It's our responsibility, and
Yeah.
we've ignored it for a couple of years now.
This would be a good opportunity if we had a committee or a group that wanted to take that as their undertaking and work with that group to get community service hours from students, so they could have their ideas of what they want to do and have the labor force to help them do it. But yeah, if it's that bad, there's no reason we couldn't get prices and budget to have it done the first time and brought back. But we should also, with that, try to line up a committee, maybe open a committee up for that, so that we're not trying to do that after the fact. Before we fix it, it'd be nice to have people in place that want to maintain it.
Well, what I'm suggesting is right now, unless people come forward, we need to just figure out how to pay someone to maintain it, not wait for this has come up for a couple of years now and nobody volunteers. Nobody has the time or the desire to do it. But they definitely want it done, which means we just gotta budget it. We gotta pay for it. It's the center of
Well, why don't we
this
put
part of Barry. It's what everybody sees. We just gotta do it. I think we can't keep deferring it down the road, hoping someone comes and volunteers to do it when
Why don't
nobody
we-
that has the knowledge.
Why don't we put this as an agenda item for the next meeting, so public can come have input if they want? And we can take some time to look at it, ask Jason to look at it and get an idea of what it might cost. We have a better discussion on it at a meeting as an agenda item.
We can do that. I just don't wanna keep pushing it off.
No, that's
Because
2 weeks, that's all.
the truth is, we need a proposal
Yep,
to figure out how much it's gonna cost.
I agree.
Because Jason doesn't have the time and manpower to do it.
If we can get that proposal, bring it to a meeting in 2 weeks and have it on the agenda, we can discuss it properly then and figure out what it's gonna cost and how we're gonna proceed at that point. And give
Well, I
people-
think it's 1 week, because I'm suggesting we do it at the DPW commission meeting where we address the highway and the DPW and superintendent's role.
I was thinking give Jason a week to see if we can get a price on some maintenance on it, so we can discuss it at our meeting and allocate the funds in 2 weeks. So we can discuss it at both, discuss it with DPW, bring it to our board meeting and let the public come into our board meeting and have comment if they
I
want.
follow what you're saying.
Because we might get some
Put
volunteers.
it
at
on
that
the
point.
meeting agenda for both of the next 2
Right,
weeks.
so
I follow
we can
you.
talk to DPW, see if we can get a price going, and hopefully bring a price back to our meeting here in 2 weeks. And maybe with that step forward, people might come up and volunteer if we actually, start moving with it instead of just talking about it.
That sounds good.
And then we can be prepared to
Well, thank
look into
you.
funding it.
No,
It's
thank
too
you.
bad Barry didn't have a garden club.
We don't yet, but this may spurn one. So, maybe we get lucky.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much
Thank you.
again for bringing it back to our attention.
Any other?
Any further comment on this item? Anybody else for a public comment? Mary Jane?
I was just wondering if there was any update that you could give to me or anybody about the possibility of the Barry Wool basketball court and monies that could go towards that if John Paul.
Did she ask you in the minutes for this?
I did read the meeting, I watched the video of the meeting that held while I was on vacation, and I know this was brought up. And what I want to do is clarify the conversation that occurred at the annual town meeting, pre-meeting, whatever that occurred down at the senior center, I forget what we call it. So, obviously you had an article on the warrant, so during the discussion of your article, it was brought up about, again, we've talked about the history, some do, some don't want a basketball court on Nornay Park / Southbury Common. There's a big push by the Southbury Common Committee that we don't put a basketball court there, so we respect that. I have been thinking, and I've talked to very few at this point, but one of my thoughts were when we were looking at the bigger upgrade of Main Street and the sidewalks in the area and the roads, one of the things that may work if we continue to pursue potentially like a MassWorks grant to help with the underground infrastructure. Well, normally when you do that, the idea is you've also got to include upgrades to the commercial or industrial properties because MassWorks are generally economic development type grants. They want to see that it's going to do more for the community than just upgrade your infrastructure. They want to see something more with it. A lot of times that includes some type of private partnership and private investment, public investment, and you bring the big picture together and you have a better application than if you just say, I need new sewer lines in this area. So what I had been thinking is maybe we could incorporate some of the old Barry Wool property into some of this development concept that could help that neighborhood and bring that neighborhood up. I have not had the chance to really speak to anybody from Wildwood Reload directly on this yet. At our meeting that we had at the senior center, that I believe at the meeting while I was on vacation, Mary Jane referenced me speaking to Dean Iandoli. I did speak to him, only because I also know that he has a historical relationship also with Wildwood because they either share properties or not Iandoli, but his wife's family, obviously the Trifolos have had much history in all the properties there. So I thought, hey, maybe there's a relationship. I'd start here, see whatever. So the conversation was, he was thinking something. He brought up, hey, what about on the corner of the undeveloped lot there, right on Main and Southbury Road? And I was like, I'd been thinking that too, but I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody yet. And I still haven't, just because I've been busy with other things, but it's something that's been rolling around in my head. But I haven't formally talked to anybody. I have no clue if anybody's even interested in sharing in this. So I don't want to mislead you to say we're making it was just a vision. It's why I haven't even talked to the other selectmen, because I haven't even gotten far enough down to the road to say, hey, I think this is a good idea, because to just throw it out there but not do any investigation may mean now 3 of us are wasting our time on something rather than just me trying to get a base to work from and then go from there. So that's the update. I'm looking for a spot that would work for the community, where the community would actually want to use it. But I haven't really gotten much further than that. So that's where I'm at today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jack Latham, I'm not sure if he was looking into purchasing the property or he owns it, but adjacent to Ware River below the dam, there's a parcel there that once had a bunch of duplexes in there that got washed away in the flood.
Okay.
And there's also been discussion on trying to find boat access to the Ware River. And I'm not sure if that'd be applicable because of the depth and, downstream access. But he had brought up possible uses, and one of the things he kind of threw out there was a playground, so I don't know how serious he was about it, but that
Okay.
came out of his mouth.
It's another opportunity to look into, because
And it's a good location, seeing it's visible from the road, and it's secluded enough where, it's far enough back, we don't have to worry about traffic and cars and whatnot.
okay. Well, thank you. To look at now, based on roads, could you better identify?
You know where the dam is, right? South
That's where
Barre.
I'm getting confused.
You get the Barre Wool on your right, you go over the bridge, the dam is on your left.
Okay, thank you.
There's that long strip of land. There used to be an ice cream shop or a little store there, but it was never able to survive. Not needful
Okay.
things, but the next building down.
All right, thank you. I thought I was generally in the same spot, but I realized if I didn't ask, I would be running down the wrong road.
But it's pretty much been vacant as long as I can ever remember.
Okay. So, I'm going to continue reaching out to, I'll probably also try to reach out to Jack, but as well as John from Wildwood Reload, and see if either are interested in something that would help upgrade that neighborhood. I believe this is one of the things that would help. So, any further discussion on the topic? All right, let's get into the actual agenda items. What I'd like to do, based on the people that are here, is we're gonna jump to the new business with the new Braintree Council on Aging agenda. I do see Braintree's in attendance, as well as our Council on Aging Director. So, what are you presenting? Who's presenting this? I didn't know if it was Andrew or Eileen, so I figured I'd just throw you to the sharks, Eileen.
I was approached by the New Braintree COA a while ago, and I've attended a few meetings. I attended the Braintree Selectmen's meeting last month, and they have wanted to merge with Barre, same
Okay.
as Hardwick. So doing the same type of thing, only with New Braintree.
Okay.
So they're here tonight, New Braintree Selectmen, to make those discussion determinations.
Okay. Is it based on the same general concept that we have with Hardwick, so all the different things in that agreement
I
would
believe so.
be the same?
Yeah, the other thing is we'd have to determine a starting point for assessment, because what we did with Hardwick was, moving forward, we're doing it based off of what their participation percentage is. We could, incorporate that into futuristic years, but we need to set a starting point for the current, for the current year. So I don't know what works for either town as a starting point based off of anticipated use. With 7,000 was the initial starting point that we used for Hardwick, and it ended up being, they end up being about, what, we say 29% of the use of that jumped up to about 19,000. I don't know if anywhere between, $2,500 assessment or a $5,000 assessment made sense, or what worked for either.
The
For
first
them and for
year,
us.
I believe what Charlie had set up was to use the funds that are coming in to them, to the facility. All the funds that were allotted to them just came through and they passed them on to Barre.
So the formula grant funds were
Formula
just
grant
the
funds.
first year agreement with Hardwick is we would just use their formula grant funds, but no additional? Or
Right.
was there like a 5,000 on
No,
top
It was
of that?
7,000 on top of the formula
Right.
grant.
There was
Okay.
something else. It wasn't we did more after. The very first, I thought,
Right.
was strictly the grant and some allocations of money per meals or something that
Most
came
of it
back.
went to a salary though,
But
formula
Right.
grant,
And,
it went to a salary.
and since the budget wasn't amended, we didn't have a revolving fund set up. It basically, all the money that came in went into the general fund. So for the money in the current fiscal year to go directly toward operations, we'd have to we'd have to basically go to a special town meeting and amend the budget by the amount that's being assessed. So it would almost be going to the next year if there was some sort of assessment.
Well, I'm sure we'd have a special town meeting.
We could do it at a
So-
special
So
town
we
meeting.
could, but,
Yeah.
my point was the initial was low, to get participation and see what
The
happened. And
entire
then-
board is welcome to come
And
up.
then, once we want to allow them to participate and get the people in and see what they're gonna do, because the people that are gonna wanna participate will come. And we'll know by next June, before then, we'll know where the numbers are, and we'll be able to set a number good for next June, so.
Request that you speak loud because they can't hear you back there.
Keeping it
Did you hear that, Greg? Speak up.
Keeping it low for the beginning, I think, is a better way to proceed, to get people to come out and participate, and make sure they wanna come and they get involved, if that works. I don't think it adds, other than daily participation, which is refunded, is it not, as with the meals that we serve?
There's not many that come over from New Braintree right now,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping that will change.
But as they change, it really doesn't change our overheads there much.
Right.
It's just more of officially open the door to have them come in. Then next year, we can look at their participation, and the town can share in the budget as we do. It doesn't hurt us to get them in now to see if they're gonna use it and have people participate. So whatever the formula grant money is, any monies that come into them for their senior center would just go towards us and not look towards that. And what I did is, after the first year, I asked if they share in our operating expenses, because we were bearing all the operating expense, and that's when we came up with a percentage. And I think that would be reasonable to do next year, as long as that's agreeable with Hardwick as well, because, I mean, that's the same deal they got the first year. In for low money, get people to participate, and have an idea by probably, April, what the participation is, so we can begin to develop a number for them for town meeting, to do the full participation.
So a question then, between the three towns, and you guys can chime in when she's done, based on your thoughts. At least right now with Hardwick and Barre, there's a formula grant that I'm guessing, because Hardwick is using Barre as the the facility, and then you are the director for that facility, then that formula grant really is just rolling right over to cover that budget. Am I correct?
There's still a salary that comes out of there, and which, she got a raise this year because of the minimum wage. So there's roughly about, I think it was like $1,500 that was left over. So, and I will send over a few bills, and that takes care of the rest of it.
Okay, so, and the reason I'm asking that, but also how much, when it comes to the regional transportation, is that a completely separate funding account? Is that also something that the towns are sharing in this or not?
No, Mark,
Okay.
Mark covers Hardwick. They are dealing with their own transportation. It's all covered by Hardwick.
So
that's
Hardwick
something
is dealing
separate.
with transportation
Yes.
when requested by their people to get them to your senior center and
Yes.
back?
They bring them over.
Okay, so similarly, that's something that New Braintree would be,
Yes, Eldabus would
Okay.
transport over to Barre from
Okay.
Braintree.
all right, and I was just curious, because obviously there's three towns, and if we do end up with MART ourselves, I know you had talked about that. Are you guys MART or WRTA?
No,
They're Eldabus.
They're Elder Bus RTA, okay.
Yeah.
Just curious how, when you get three communities together that may have the same, how the benefit could happen about actually getting some type of regional circuit going. But that would depend greatly on you all being in the same group.
Yeah, we are having discussions with WRTA. We actually have a meeting with them tomorrow to discuss how we kind of break some of these boundaries down and better, how to make our transportation system more beneficial for the population that we serve, to make sure that the connections are there, that people that are within the three-town area can actually reach, the more densely populated areas.
You don't need a bus stop at every town line, you mean?
Right. Pretty much, but making sure that, the people that want to go to Gardner can actually get to Gardner, that they don't have to wait till 5 other people want to go there till our service will bring them there. So we do have a meeting tomorrow to discuss that with them to try to figure out some way of improving that service.
Okay. I guess the next question I would have for the new Braintree Selectmen is this concept something, obviously if it works, you're kind of like, let's do it, we're gonna be committed for years, sharing a senior center facility and the operating costs of that facility.
Well, that's kind of where we're here tonight for, is actually, I mean, really, there's nothing really budgeted in our accounts,
Okay.
except for what they get for a grant. So we have to see what the value and the cost is. And the value seems very, very high for our seniors. Problem is how to fund it.
Yeah.
So that's where we're kind of sitting in going, okay, yes, we can, basically set this up, but then, if you come in with a heavy number, we're in trouble.
Gotcha.
What services do you offer your seniors now? Do you keep a facility open, or do you not have one open?
Well, not much.
Basically, Drew's once a week. They meet once a week.
Yeah,
That's it.
I mean, we had a room at the town hall, which you get 2 or 3 people in maybe, on a good week. So we kind of disbanded that room and put the Hardwick Police Department in there instead, since they were more needed at that particular point, where they were. So we did set it up, so there is still an area for them, but not a private room set up as much. I mean, they could still have the hall for their suppers and their dinners and things like that. But other than that, not a lot.
Have you gotten an opportunity to see any of the monthly calendars that are put out by our director?
No, I mean, I've been there before for different meetings and kind of scanned around them.
Are those for them to bring back to their town? Because that would be a great
Yeah, I
thing.
did see the one she gave us last,
I did give them one
yeah,
last
last time. I said, that's great. There's a couple of things I should go for.
But yeah, and I think your seniors will find, and that's what happened in Hardwick. Once they saw that it was open to them there, the numbers really jumped up, and you may have a lot more participation.
And then, if the numbers do jump, then the grant money will actually go up. Because right now, we're not even using some of our money, right?
Right.
We're giving it back every
Back
year,
over.
which is.
Is the formula grant something that does have a historical usage that causes it to go up or down, or is it just?
It's based on population, and
Okay.
right now it's $12 per elder.
Okay.
And I believe New Braintree has a population of 287.
And how does that relate to Hardwick and Barre for population?
There is their senior population is, I just knew that. I think it's 13, and Hardwick is just 1,000. It's like 998.
So significantly less.
Significantly less.
So when you hear big numbers, like we said, Hardwick is close to 19,000. If you guys have a tenth of the, or a fifth of the population, you'd probably be more like, a fifth of that's 4,000. Not a huge number. I mean, I don't think your number's going to go crazy. We tried to do it just for equal participation to try to share some of the costs. But obviously, no one would ever be turned away from the senior center. That's just how they work anyway, so they can still go. But we certainly appreciate if you can participate with what we ask when it comes, but I don't anticipate it would be very high. It would be very, probably reasonably low.
You do have a lot of activities over there, and like you said, Hardwick, came on board, and then they saw all the things that were going on, and it was a good setup. I mean, it's a nice building, it's a nice area, and, we've got a lot of functions going on.
There's a community for seniors that a lot of folks don't realize exists because they just don't try to go out or they don't see it and get to
Right.
it. And if they do go and they see it, they realize that they are part of something that's out there that has a lot to offer them. And I always encourage it to get larger. So I'm open to it, obviously. And I don't know what the next step would be when you're ready to, how you work to move the grant money to do that, but.
How much did you say they had for him?
total in fairness, I think they're just the minimum, which is 6,000.
6,000.
And some of that goes towards the salary.
When you say salary, you mean for?
They just hired, an outreach worker, or
Okay.
community liaison kind of person.
Is that the
For 15
door-to-door
hours a
type
month, yeah.
assistance, or, yeah, okay.
Right, for those in the community that are probably homebound, can't get out, she goes and she helps them with applications or
Okay.
different types of things, services, whatever may be needed.
So for 15 hours in a week?
A month.
A month,
15
okay.
hours a month.
Okay, so some a little
So
over
that
two, little over
might use
$2,000.
most of your
a year.
formula grant then, by the
No,
end
about
of
a
the
third
year.
of it.
Right?
What's that?
Not the she's
Yeah.
talking about the formula grant. It's pretty much used up,
Right now?
yeah.
Well,
No,
at
it's-
15 hours a month times
think it's like-
12 times,
Yeah,
I
don't
think it's
know.
like 2,000
Yeah,
comes
if
out
it's
of
min-
there,
if
right
it's
around
paid-
2,000.
If they only pay minimum, I don't know what they pay.
That comes out of the formula grant, so it's
12.
still like 4,000.
Yeah, if it's paid at 12, it's only a couple thousand,
Okay.
yeah.
Right around there.
So
And that-
she's
Give or
figuring
take.
about 4,000 left.
And that would be probably close to the number at the, if their participation is average, so I mean, that's,
no, I just meant it was 15 hours times 12 months
right, so 180 hours. So-
times their rate.
Right.
I think it's 1250, isn't it?
Yeah, so.
I think
All
that's
right.
what it is.
The question is,
It's like 22.
from my perspective, I guess, is, okay, so that much you keep, you still manage that person for your town and your service. That's correct, right? You're not expecting, okay.
Right.
The remaining amount of that, is that something where there's a percentage of that you would still want to hold on to, or is that the amount you would be willing to pass on to us for the operating of the senior center?
I think we pass that on, wouldn't we? If we're not doing anything at our place, we should be able to pass it on.
Yeah, but I think it would also be up to the, COA in the Braintree
Right.
now, what they think.
Yeah.
Right now, we're just
Mm-hmm.
discussing, we're in that discussion phase. The Council on Aging, there are a couple of members that don't wanna move,
Mm-hmm.
so
Understandable.
we're just, right now, we're looking to see if we can actually afford to have them come here. I mean, it's obvious that you offer a heck of a lot more programs than we offer, because we offer practically nothing.
I'm sure it would be affordable. I have no doubt of that.
Yeah.
But I'd make sure your council sees those flyers and
Yeah.
really read it. There's a lot that Eileen offers
There
down
is.
there. It's
I guess it comes down to, we're talking about maybe a balance of $3,500, something like that.
if that.
And if that's something New Braintree was willing to give to the town of Barre, I would have no issues approving you guys coming into our senior center and participating for the rest of this fiscal year. And then we can look at the attendance to see if that $3,500 is appropriate, or is it something that maybe we would ask, not saying you could commit to, but we could ask to say, you know what, we're able to do this, you came in and for some reason, 180 of your people decide that they like senior centers, and you never realize it. Now, well, now we gotta figure out, can we handle 180 people? Now, I know that's not gonna happen.
She's smiling. She's hoping you.
But I'm just saying that.
She'd love 180 more.
Just based on population, of your elder population, you're currently about 10% of what we're already handling. Not by people actually attending, but population of the towns. If that percentage is reflective, then you're gonna affect us by about 10%.
I gotta be honest with you, I would expect maybe 20,
Right.
to be perfectly honest with you. I think those would be the numbers we would be looking at.
And then we need to find out, based on what you believe your current attendance is, you add 20 people, how's our facility handling those numbers now? Can your floor
It's
plan
not
handle
high.
it is all I'm
It's
saying?
not high.
Okay.
It's like 3, 4.
I'm just looking for the total number that we used for the calculation of us, our rates, and then if we added it. So I was trying to remember that number.
So when you're having a busy day, how many people are in that center at a time?
On a given day,
On a busy one?
on a busy day, Tuesdays are our busiest day, I would say,
Well, this is their
I would
numbers.
say probably about, yes.
I'm sitting here
that's the
saying,
range.
these numbers seem really low for you spouting off, we do a great job.
All at once and it's throughout the day?
Well, throughout the day.
Throughout the day. I'm saying at once, how many you normally might have, 50,
At once.
60, maybe?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
That's still pretty good, but we have much more than that capacity there, don't we?
Yes, it's like 150.
Right, so.
And that's all, I just wanted
Right, so she
to
has
look at
100
our
come through
room
in
to
a day
grow in
and
type
50 or
concept.
60 at once, we're still at half capacity. That's,
All right,
So we had the total number that we used in the assessment breakdown, when doing Barre and Hardwick's assessment was 166, with 46 coming from Hardwick, 120 coming from Barre.
Okay.
So assuming, what,
That jump.
10 to 20?
say 20,
Let's say
bump it to
20 more
186.
people. So
You can easily accommodate that growth right now, in the next year, so you're not expecting anything that would
There'd
cause
be a-
it to
there'd
like,
be a
okay,
nine.
now we're pushing
Shouldn't
our
be
wall
11
limits, you know,
11%.
the facility limits
Yeah,
are
so
my
you-
concern, because that'll grow into a whole different.
using that same calculation, you're talking about $6,000 total. If you took, it was basically if you took the total budget, reduced it by the formula grant, and then took the remaining balance and assessed it out based off population, you're probably talking about $6,000.
$6,000, and if that was offset by the 3,500, because
Well, closer to
what you're
4,
saying right
but
now
yeah.
doesn't factor in their formula grant, because you didn't have that in your numbers.
If you reduce.
So I'm just saying, you're saying
Yeah.
total,
So if you, what we did was we took the $80,000 was the total budget. Reduced 5 from Hardwick for their contribution for the formula grant, reduced another 5 for our formula grant. And then if we said we took another 6 out for their formula grant, divided it that 10% of that remaining balance came from New Braintree, you're at about $6,000.
Okay.
Assuming that you had 20 people participate.
so that would be something we would have to factor in. Are you saying that right now what we're doing is almost, say
100.
FY '21 would actually be paying for the population usage of FY '20?
Yes. Because what we're looking back is we're looking at back in December, we take the last calendar year of unduplicated check-ins. So, and then seeing what came from Barre, what came from Hardwick, what came from New Braintree, dividing that, and then taking that budget number that we come up with in February and dividing that out, or reducing it based off the amount that we get in formula grant funding, and then dividing the remaining balance to the surrounding towns based off of usage.
Okay.
So say you got 10 or 15 people coming from New Braintree now, how are you funding that? Really, you're not.
It's not being, yeah,
Right.
it's not.
It's just been something we've just done. So I guess what it sounds like we're presenting here is moving forward for a longer term.
At 20
Assuming you had 20 people participate on an annual basis. Beyond your foundation, your formula grant, they would also need another 6,000? Or
based on-
3,000 because
No.
your old calculations never had their formula grant in
No.
it to subtract to
He was
start
just
with?
saying 6.
It was 6 if it was, basically 11% is 64,000,
Okay.
which is the remaining balance of taking out.
They'd
all
have
the
20 of the 188 participants,
Yeah.
Which,
186
right now,
participants.
they don't budget that at all.
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing it up. These are things you will have to consider what you can or can't,
Right.
and we'll have to consider what we can or can't.
That's why we would need
Um,
an actual number.
Right.
Because I mean, at this point in time, really all we can offer is what we have through the grant.
Well, for this
For
year, I
this
would
year,
be
that's
open
it.
to just,
Yep,
if
for
you're
this year,
willing
that's
to
it.
take the balance of your grant and pass it on, because we've already budgeted this year as well. So what we got is what we got. But next year, we may find that the amount that does participate changes what your percentage of,
Right, I
so.
think if we have those before fiscal year numbers, we can look at those better, give you answers, we see where we got.
That'd be a good
Some
idea.
money's
That-
around.
That way we would be able to see
Yeah,
what kind
that's-
of usage
it's really no
you're
difference.
actually gonna get.
No, it's really
Right.
no
You
difference.
may only get 10 people. I mean, they-
Right.
And then you'd be looking at 3,000.
Prorated on the
Yeah,
numbers.
And that's, you know.
Then it's no different than an ambulance service, because that's all prorated on the same setup as the numbers. So
Yeah.
that goes up and down each
It
year.
would follow generally the same concept,
Right.
we just don't have the grant thrown into
Mhm.
that. I mean, personally, when it comes to just operationally, I'm in full support of it. It just comes down to, like they said, can we figure out if the numbers fit in their budget for long term? So I would be wide open to this, so that's where I'm at.
And I would also say, when we get, to next April, we look at the numbers, and you start to look at where you are, don't just say, no, we can't do it. If we have to come up with something and work into it, and that's fine too. Anything helps. The senior center is gonna be open, and their citizens can go if they want
Yeah, I
anyways,
think-
regardless if we say it's officially open or not. But I think, get a fair number, we'll have a good idea of the participation, if people wanna do it. We should be able to come up by April and give you an idea. I mean, Andrew did it pretty quickly here, and it's very accurate, because we know
I
what
mean,
we
I think if we
budgeted.
can get numbers by February, it would help a lot.
We could, if,
Yeah.
depends on
They
the
try to
participation.
do
That's-
that
Then we can
with
actually
Hardwick,
see-
because we also know you need January
No,
through
we're not-
whatever to get your
We already
budget.
have our budget amount this year, and that's gonna run the facility.
Right.
So it's not like 20 more people are gonna blow our budget out down there. The budget's not gonna change, but it helps relieve some of the burden. It helps us keep her salary happy as we put more on her as well. When it comes, that's my intention, yes.
That's what Greg just said.
That's my intention, yes, is we talked about that in the beginning, and I was against you having more money in the beginning, because this is new, and you hadn't proven yourself, nothing's going. But I certainly think we'll talk about that when your contract comes up, because of the, I'm happy with how the place runs, and if we get more participation, I think that warrants that as well. But that's part of why I asked Hardwick for more money, is because it allowed us to pay a little more and make sure we get this kind of treatment for everyone going.
Yeah.
But
I think we just have to go back now and make sure that all the seniors and that.
Yeah, we'll agree with the council.
give it a try. Pick a fun event and give it a try. Just have them all come do a day, come together as a group and see what they think.
Have any of them come up for the day?
There's been a few, we have had a few. I did invite them over for lunch, board members, a couple of them showed up. But we do have some folks from New Braintree. We have a former board member who comes over 3 times a week to do Tai Chi. We have another one that was doing it, and then she got sick, but she comes over frequently as well. So folks do come over and use the facility, and most of them that I've talked to have been pushing to have you folks merge.
And I think the daily meals too, the whole idea of having a place to go and eat with other people every day and make friends, and the social aspect of it is something that I have a lot of longevity in my family, and I've had a lot of family members into their 80s and 90s, and these type of facilities meant the world to them. And we'll all be there someday. It's very selfish to say I want to support it and push, because we'll all be there someday, and the better we establish it, the better it is for all of us. And we quite frankly owe them, period. So I won't be hard about this issue, and I won't be tough on it too much, but I want to see it happen.
Okay.
Yes, Floyd?
I had one comment. It seems like the senior center is a pretty well-developed center. You're gonna get a lot of participation. And tied in with the first agenda item is trying to get volunteers to go up and do the weeding. And the concern was that if they're unsupervised, they may do more damage than good. A lot of seniors that have grown up gardening have backyard gardens, flower gardens. And it seems like it's a pretty active crew doing Tai Chi, yoga, and whatnot. But if, through bending and whatnot, they're unable to do the gardening, would it make sense to try to incorporate a garden program for the seniors where they could possibly educate the young kids in the proper maintenance? And
Possibly.
just a thought trying to,
It's certainly,
There's
Tie a couple things
there's a
together.
good point for supervision that people really know, more than we do. We've
it seems like if you have a
never
capable
learned it like they
audience
did.
that would be capable of supervision, it might be a good connection.
Mhm. We have the groups, we just gotta get them together. There's a lot of kids that need hours every year, and a lot of them will probably enjoy it.
More the merrier at the senior center.
All right.
Well, I'd make a motion, we officially extend the offer for New Braintree to come join us and roll over the rest of their formula grant for this year. We're only a month into this fiscal year, so it gets you a good year out of it, and should be able to come up with numbers, I would think, by February for them, so they can
Certainly.
kick the tires and see what you think. But please try to get people to come down.
I would second that motion, but I would only, and I doubt it's gonna matter, modify it to say that based on hard work, also agreeing to the incorporation of a third town, just so that we formally give them the, hey, what are your thoughts? Let us know if they say no, because then we'll have to sit at the table with them and have a whole different discussion. But I don't wanna say it's just my way or the highway either. I don't feel like that's how we should work with our neighbors.
No, that's.
So that's it. I would second the motion
We should
based
hear their
on that.
voice, we should hear their voice on it, and I'd be surprised if they had, those board members would have any different opinion than we do, is that they know how well it's been for their community, I think.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
Not on that.
All right, we'll call for a vote on that.
Aye.
Aye. Anything else you'd like to?
Yes. We've still not received a contract for the building inspector.
Ah,
Oh, we still have to finalize that.
what were we missing?
It was
What-
just we wanted to affirm the assessment numbers, and I did get those revised, those figures
Okay.
revised, so, that was the only thing, and the first half bills already actually went out for it.
We
based off the
will
last-
Next week, maybe at
formally
DPW?
review it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do it.
If not next week, after the DPW commission will do a board of selectmen meeting.
He said DPW.
But at a
should-
minimum, within 2 weeks,
Okay.
we should be able to have it on our agenda and make the vote so
Yeah,
that
I
you can
think
get it
those
out.
numbers were still up in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all just
But-
based off the the revised cost of Hardwick's vehicle, but
Vehicle,
we
right.
got that squared away, so.
And I do remember seeing that now.
Right,
I
and
just-
do we have a contract for the EMS?
Wasn't that a continue each year type thing?
Is it- Okay, okay.
I know we raised the base amount to the 15,000, but I think when we did that, it was kind of another one of those each year, it just kind of recurs until somebody says stop.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Okay.
I forget how many years that was allowed to roll over like that, but
It's either 20 or 30.
yeah, it was one of
I
those,
wanna say it's 20 in those type of things, but
whatever the state allows for municipal agreements to do that by is kind of what we're following.
And then one other thing, did we ever get an answer back from the cable company about doing the school board meetings?
We did not. Now, I didn't formally, I think, forward it appropriately. I know that we talked, but I can't recall at what venue, so I may be the only one that was aware, so I apologize if I didn't pass it on.
I think I heard it for one of the meetings here.
I think you did, and I just don't, we had the issue with, since Tyler left.
Yeah.
And I also
We
brought-
don't have anybody recording the school committee meetings.
And I also asked the school also if there was not a program there that one of the seniors could not get into, and they think that was two-sided, I guess.
So I do suggest that if we can't get someone like that, we should
Yeah, we have to backfill that
post
position
that
still.
job
Yes.
and make requests for applications so someone can take that job on.
Yeah.
If you're not getting response, come back to us and we can discuss if the minimum wage is not enough to get someone in there to actually do it and count on it.
Okay.
Because I think it's, the importance of the community is bigger than just, oh, it's just somebody running a camera. No,
Mhm.
it's, the end product matters, we gotta get it out there. That's my perspective.
I'm surprised the school doesn't put a camera system like this up, so they're just recording it.
You're surprised?
I am. They certainly should.
Alrighty,
Okay,
so
well,
we will
that's it.
follow up with that too and hopefully be able to get a better answer soon.
And then one of these days, all 5 towns need to get together on some sort of committee. that we talked
We
about
were in favor of
ways.
that, yeah, I don't know how we wound
We
up
never
with.
really finalized.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a whole 5-town meeting to do it maybe,
We
or
sent
we
our-
wanna do that.
Yeah, we're,
With that, I would make a recommendation that once we get through this series of reassessments and state involvement and districts fighting towns and all that budget, then we meet again. We then reach out via email to set a date to have that first formal meeting.
And see where we're gonna go, yeah.
I would make that recommendation. Let's get through this wave and then,
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, yeah, everybody else has pretty much responded saying, yes, they're interested. You know, my thought was, I mean, hash it out, would be one selectman and a finance.
Yeah, I think we talked about that as well.
I do believe though that Peterson also requested they might want to be in because they're involved in our building inspector regional agreement, so there would be another. So I don't know if,
But I think if we keep.
do you want to keep it to the school or
No,
keep it to
no.
all the neighboring towns
No,
that?
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
mean, so the school would have the 5 towns. If the building inspector is in other towns and that, then that could be a different entity, you know, the dog officer, or, you know, a different, whoever we're municipal tie-ins with from different towns.
In other words, bigger than just a school, but the multiple community,
Right.
and all the ways that we interact, it would be
Right.
smart to keep some sort of advisory committee
Yeah, something
together to
going
keep
on so that
communications
each town really
between the
knows
boards.
what's going on and not just hearsay and things like that.
I would almost suggest that when we do this, we have the one regional committee that all towns can be a
Right.
part of like that. But the agenda determines whether a town wants to show up.
Right, okay.
You know, if
Yeah.
the building inspection is not I'm not showing up to that meeting.
Right.
But if it is, or if it's not mine, but I might be interested, then I'll come and participate in how my town may be looking at saying, you know what, that's an agreement we want to discuss and be a part
That
of.
would work.
From our perspective, now this is very selfish, being Barry, is that may also include Rutland. And I would look at it as Barry reaching out to all the towns at neighbor Barry, and we would call that region where we're asking, do all of you want to participate in this? And then right after the September, October time, when everybody knows what their school budget is, then we'll reach back out and say, what date works? And let's get that first meeting underway, and then we can all talk about what we really want it to be about.
Yeah, I think we all need to get
Is that-
on the same page.
Yeah, the Rutland is, I don't know, do we wanna?
We have an agreement with them as it is, so they're not,
We do.
and we share a border.
I mean, you can even talk about the transit, you know, issues. I mean, you've got Margaret's great for hardware, and then we've got ours that's so-so, and then you've got battles with yours, you know?
Yeah, and maybe if we did, maybe at that point, yeah.
Right, I
Because
understand.
then when you say
So, I
Rutland, do
mean,
we look at Spence and other
maybe
places in our regional
we
agreement
have
with
the
them?
pressure, you know.
Well, the thing.
And that may impact
the other bus
the
systems
possibility
to-
for the,
Or move.
Once
See
you
what I'm saying?
get past Rutland, all of those towns have somebody east of them that is a better group to be involved in my opinion. I don't think they're interested in getting into a regional agreement that affects, say, Peterson, Barry, Hardwick, because we're so far west. At that point, you're getting into like county and now you got the Worcester County Selectmen's Association, that could be more of that than versus a tighter group.
so, but Rutland ties in because they're really in our, well, I guess they're in our IT and our regional, in our
And they have
dispatch.
agreements with OChem and sharing,
Right.
public safety stuff, so I mean, that's why I think you can't exclude them and,
Well, they're also with us with the dog officers.
so, right, so,
So, yeah.
Does that make sense?
that's where I'm coming from, so I think if we do that, then we're,
Then we have our first big meeting, we'll have to decide on membership size, what's gonna constitute a quorum. We could say a quorum is of the members attend that evening, because, like I said, if other people don't wanna be there for that, you don't wanna lose a quorum, so we might have the quorum go according to members of the night that are there for that meeting. So any vote could be the quorum of the members that attend.
Yeah, I just don't know if we wanna actually have quorums, cause then, you know, then you, I mean, if you have this group, then you always could go back to your designated towns
Mhm.
and discuss what was brought
it's
up.
not a formal approving group, it's not a formal group representing any one municipal entity,
No, but if the
nor
group,
is it representing more than one individual that's elected from anyone, so.
if the group wants to make a recommendation, and they, as a group, have a consensus on what they're gonna make for a recommendation, you'd need, not two people to say, well, this is a recommendation. You need to have a certain quorum that's gonna say, right, this is what we agree we're bringing forward. So if they're gonna make some sort of recommendation as a group to bring back to their towns, you need some way to quantify that it was, agreed upon by the whole group.
But that's I guess the question is I'm concerned with creating a group that represents all the towns where it's more than just everybody getting together to make sure they're on the same page versus we gotta vote and then tell everybody else that didn't agree that now this is what we're doing. I don't see that beneficial to this group. It's just one more layer of, like, we're almost creating a regional government in that regard, and I don't want that.
I'm not suggesting that the
I don't
group
think
has-
anybody wants that, so
We're
it
not
shouldn't
suggesting
be
any
voting,
author-
it's a discussion.
We're not suggesting
forum.
any authority or any authority at all for the group. I was just suggesting that if they're gonna come together and recommend something, that the body normally has some way to recommend it as a group. That's
Right,
all.
but
It's
what I'm
not-
saying
It doesn't
is,
have any authority
they're
to
not
exert
recommending
any power.
anything. They're coming, listening to what other people think, and they go back to their town, and then their town will recommend something.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
not-
like, in other words, we talk, then we go back, I talk to you, and I talk to you if I'm the one on that.
Mhm.
And then we as a board talk to the other people that were interested in the same concept, and we get all the boards together and they make their, in other words, this is almost like an idea group that will break down to different meetings later between the towns that are interested in sharing stuff. But it's not a group to say, this is how we're gonna go, and if you don't like it, you can't be a part of it,
That's not the-
because.
That's not the point of the vote. It's, you wanna have an idea of how many people in this group are supporting this idea. When you bring an idea back, did this have 90% support, full support, only a couple
No, I
agree with this?
You have to have some sort of.
Some sort of gauge
But
for the
I
rest
don't
of your
think
members
you
to
want
understand the
a
participation
agenda or,
desire.
But
you
see,
know,
that's not a
or-
vote, that's just everybody voicing their opinion and somebody going back to their saying,
Well,
3 out of 5 people thought this was good.
Well, I think that's something we work on the first
Yeah,
meeting.
it's some way to.
And I agree, right, this is my
some way to
opinion, but let that
quantify the
meeting
interest.
figure itself
That's what
out.
I'm looking for a way to quantify the interest. So when you come back and say, here's what we talked about, well, yeah, that sounds sketchy. A lot of guys wanted to do that. Well, 3 people were in favor. Out of how many? 14. Oh, well, then I don't like it.
Right.
Versus, well, we toss around, it seemed like about, 9 out of the 10 were in favor of it. Now, that sounds like a
But I
good idea.
think,
Okay.
each town.
You have an idea what
talk
you're
among
after.
themselves which ones they want to go in to represent that town to a point.
Yeah.
And as long as, you could have 5 or 6 different people from town or 1 or 2, as long as you don't get a quorum. Then you gotta start posting them, then you gotta
Right.
start doing this, and I don't think we wanna be there. We don't want.
I also
quorum
do
to make a
believe it's-
decision. We just want individuals coming up with ideas or problems. that we
That's why I
can
suggested the quorum would be just a quorum of those that are there that evening. A quorum just means majority of those in the room that night.
Right.
That's all it
It's
means.
not a legal quorum, but it's just.
We're not gonna set a
quorum.
number for a quorum. It's
Right.
going to be a floating number,
Yeah.
so.
Either way.
But
And nothing against Andrew, but I do believe this is something that should be built on the elected people in their respective towns, not appointed. So in other words, from my opinion, this group isn't something where a town should be saying my town administrator will attend.
Well, if that's
Because
what
I
you wanna be,
think
but-
we have those type of groups already, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but all too often I end up somewhere and I'm talking to a town administrator, but I don't know what the selectmen think. And we're on a different level.
That's exactly.
And I don't think that town administrators should get invited to this group if they have something to add, but they shouldn't be actually a member of the group. That's how I see this particular group.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my opinion, but again, let all the other towns have their voice and go with
I think
it,
it should just be elected officials, period.
because to me, that means you're actually representing the voice of the people, not just the voice of the administration, because they don't always have the same opinions, and I'm not saying they should. There are times where we need the town administrator to say that is a very bad fiscal plan,
he loves all of my ideas.
But, so in other words, he would be at that meeting with a different sense. He's got a lot more going on in his mind, where we're
Right, well, he's looking at it a different way. He's
Yeah.
looking at where it fits in.
If he's doing his job right. Try. Anyway, yes, so I would like to continue to pursue that, and maybe we can follow up, yeah, late September, October, whenever we know the school budget thing finally gets resolved, let's start that again.
Okay.
And if you don't hear from us, you guys start it again and get back to us.
A lot of rest here.
Appreciate it. Does that make sense to everybody else here?
Yeah, we'll get through this.
We could have the meeting at the senior center.
There you go. We'd have plenty of room at the senior center to have this nice get
That would be
together.
an idea.
Go anywhere as long as we don't.
So, thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. You too, Eileen, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night. Okay. I would like to go to the next new business item on the alternate planning board appointee vote may be taken. Just to give a little background as to why this is on the agenda. I know it was discussed at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. Some fine technicalities could be brought up, so I figured I'll start with those. They're minor, I don't think it was anything major. We didn't necessarily identify the alternate planning board member on the agenda the last meeting. So to make any final decisions on that would have been something that we technically shouldn't have done. Again, fine technicality, because we did reference in general the planning board appointment, which could be interpreted. Second, I do know there were discussions regarding the alternate planning board member. And when I watched the video of the meeting after, because I wasn't in the meeting and in the middle of the discussion, it was a little easier to sit back and just kind of hear how different sides were talking and not get lost in it. And from my perspective, and maybe I misunderstood some things that were said, which looking back, I can realize how people could misunderstand things I say. I thought a few things were slightly misrepresented, and I don't think anybody intended to do this. But to clarify, the appointment of this position is under the sole authority of the Board of Selectmen. Out of respect, we request the recommendation of the board to which we would be appointing, with the hope that that recommendation is based on potential experience or knowledge or what they could bring to the board. I do believe that when we appoint people, we have used different methods for different reasons. For instance, I believe Greg brought up something like when we hired the Council on Aging director. We did rely on the Council on Aging to be the search committee and kind of present the 3 interviewees, and then we didn't really go outside the 3 they presented, but we did choose not the first, but the second, I believe, on the Council on Aging recommendations.
Right.
I think the difference between that versus the planning board and their recommendation for someone being added to the planning board, not necessarily their recommendation for a full-time position that does not directly answer to the planning board. For instance, the Council on Aging is an advisory board, so the director on the Council on Aging actually does not directly answer to them. Once they're hired, they answer to Andrew and through the Board of Selectmen, not through the Council on Aging, because they are an advisory board. They don't have hiring and firing power. Which means that if they make a recommendation to a director, and then after that director, they still have the ability to not always agree without the fear of somebody taking the job from the other. There's a little autonomy after that point. So their recommendation isn't always necessarily based on this person's gonna do what I want them to do. Because once they get the job, they can flip, it doesn't matter. They're gonna do what they're gonna think is, the job is right no matter what the council says. I think when we're talking about appointing someone to an elected board, because in the middle of the term, somebody leaves and that point now has to be replaced, we have to be careful with the concept of the majority of a board having a voice and increasing the majority of that board. So you can't just rely on the recommendation solely on the fact that it's a recommendation that came from the planning board. You have to rely on the reasons why that recommendation was presented. Have we received more than one application for someone to be on the alternate planning board? Okay. So when we requested the recommendation from the planning board, did they provide a recommendation on the applicant?
Since the opening of the alternate planning board position, so the position hasn't been officially open since the appointment was made to move the alternate to the, to the full planning board.
Yeah.
The planning board hasn't actually held a meeting. We've had this is the second meeting since that official appointment. So, we haven't received any additional applications other than the one that we received prior to the opening. And we haven't received any sort of communication back from them to say that they're recommending any specific person.
So they didn't have a meeting the next night after our planning board our Board of Selectmen meeting on the 15th? Or whenever we had it in July?
Well, it might have been.
They're normally the day right after.
Might have been the day after, but they didn't.
It wasn't on their agenda.
It hasn't been it hasn't been, it wasn't like a week after your meeting. It's been 2 weeks, but they haven't had one since I believe that their next meeting is actually tomorrow night.
Right. But they've had a meeting since it was brought up in our meeting when I wasn't here.
I believe that there was the next night.
The reason I'm bringing this up is we only have one applicant. There actually is evidence that the town supports this applicant because there were 2 write-in campaigns for this position during the election in April. Susan LaRose and Ralph Rogers. The total number of votes cast was 116. 61 and 55. Difference of 6 votes out of 116 separated him. Susan LaRose won, rightfully. That's how the vote went. She got it. She's also the reason we put her right up to the planning board, because the town voiced that they thought she should be alternate, which means she would be the fill-in if a planning board member left. But enough of the town made the same claim within less than, well, not even 6% difference between the two for Ralph. So for me, I don't understand the hesitation to appoint him. Nobody even put their name on the ballot for this position in April. So we actually have somebody in town who's interested, took the time to fill out the application, ran in a write-in vote. He wants to be a part of it. Since I got on this board, I've said we should not be refusing people who want to volunteer their time to be a part of any of our boards, committees, or commissions. It's difficult for me to now say, with the support the town showed, with the effort and the time he put in, with the time he put in on the marijuana bylaw discussion review committee, that we question whether he's actually interested in being committed to learn that role, do that job, and put the time in necessary to help this town.
I don't think anybody's questioned that.
Then why was he not appointed?
Because we did have discussion on it, and planning board members did want a chance to look at it and see if they wanted to make a recommendation first. And I saw no harm to wait for this next meeting to see if they were gonna do a recommendation or if anything else came forward. I didn't see any reason to be haste and move forward with it immediately. Why rush to fill the spot right now? Give it a couple weeks. And we've had 3 weeks, and they've had no applications.
And that's why I'm bringing it up.
But at
because
that
they
point-
also mentioned they wanted to go look for other people.
But at that point, I saw no harm to wait a couple weeks and not make a hasty decision.
No, and that's why I'm asking, because
I'll
appreciate that.
gladly justify why I moved forward and didn't do it.
No.
I forget who was in the room, but they indicated they would want to look, but,
Yeah.
in all fairness, we've given the other boards and things a chance to have some input on it. Doesn't mean they get to say it, but we can hear their input and why. And if they've had none, that's, you know.
The reason I bring
that
it
speaks
up is
loudly
because
as well.
in the meeting, it sounds like it came off as the board would accept the recommendation from the planning board, and that's generally how we do it. And not long after that, in the same meeting, and it might have been within seconds or minutes, Ralph then said he would withdraw his application. I believe because he did not believe the planning board would support him, and therefore he would no longer have the opportunity, he would be denied by the Board of Selectmen because of what he heard in the room. Is that what you intended with what you said?
Of course not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because I do think when I watched the video, it may have been confusing, because that's how I heard it.
Okay.
And I figured other people might have heard that, so I'm bringing it up so that we can all just, like I said, when you watch it
like I
from a
said-
video and you weren't in the meeting, you hear it so different than when you're in the
When we
meeting.
appoint a department head, we always want to do the department head, and when department heads fill spots, yes, we take their recommendation completely. But yet, this is different, it's an elected position, we are the sole responsible to do it, but we still want to have the input, I would think, of the board if they want to. And also your input, since you weren't here, on appointing this serious
yeah.
committee member. You know, I saw no harm, I thought it to be wiser to wait than to rush it.
Okay.
Especially given the absence of one of our board members.
No,
That's-
and I appreciate that, and that's why I figured I'd just bring the topic back up, because in my opinion, it was,
Mhm.
from how I heard it, I thought others might hear it the same way, so I figured let's just bring it up and figure out where are we as a board. I know I didn't have a chance, so I do appreciate you delaying it long enough so I could have a voice on
And I'm
it.
glad you had that input. It's, people should recognize what Ralph has done with the marijuana bylaw committee that we formed and the effort he put in, which is extensive. You guys put in 50, 80 hours into that, I mean, in a short time frame, maybe more.
We gave it like a month,
Yeah, it was tight.
and they met like
Um,
20 times in a month.
No, I had no problem with him wanting to be on the board, but I don't recall, there was someone in the room from the planning board that wanted to have a chance to have some input. I had no problem to wait, and like I said, why rush the appointment? And then, you know, I hope he'd reconsider his withdrawal of his application, because I think I suggested he didn't withdraw it that night, but I asked him not to withdraw it, because just because they want to meet and look for opinions doesn't take him out of our decision. I thought I extended that to you that night that I'd said that.
You
but
absolutely
I didn't want him to withdraw it, but we can't leave his name in there if he won't accept it to be there, because obviously he would need to come to the committee if he's appointed to it.
So I did reach out to the planning board and mention that we were gonna be discussing this, and I had asked Andrew to do it over a week ago. So they had plenty of notice, it wasn't something mentioned yesterday. Only one planning board member showed up tonight, and that's Floyd. I'm not going to expect you to talk for the board. But do you have anything you would like to present as a member of the board?
No, I'm in here just to kind of see what the opinion is and to try to make sure, that I'm getting the full story
Yeah.
on both sides of it, so.
And that's fine, that's why I figured you are here, you can have your own voice as well. I just didn't wanna ignore you, because you do,
Right.
are a representative.
We did have a planning board meeting on the 16th, and at that meeting, no other applicants were discussed, and really there was no discussion whatsoever on the associate position being filled.
Okay.
And if you haven't received any information or contact from the planning board, then I guess I would assume that nobody else had come forward, so.
Okay.
And I do agree with your position, I do think that Ralph did a great job with the marijuana community bylaw. I think that was, you know, possibly what helped us finally getting it passed by having alternative points of view.
Okay. Thank you. So is this something that you wanna vote on, or is it something you still wanna wait on the planning board? Because
Would
it only
Ralph-
lasts till April.
Would Ralph like to withdraw his withdrawal and leave his application to the board?
I would.
Then I'd make a motion that we appoint him as the associate position in the planning board.
I second that.
Any further discussion from, you had something earlier you thought you might have said, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you yet, Mary Jane.
You weren't the only one that felt that way. I was here at the meeting, and you can watch it on the video, and other people in the town, I'm sure, heard, and I agree with what you felt.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, that was pushed, gotta withdraw.
Okay. So, with that said, I would like to call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much, Ralph.
Great, thank you so much.
Check in with the town clerk. Andrew, get all the paperwork and the vows and all that stuff done.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I didn't come across harsh or gruff. Sometimes I'm very quick and blunt on them.
Not at all.
If they wanted to have input, I give them a chance. They've had 3 weeks, they've had none, they're done. They'll take that as gruff too, I'm sure, but, it's not a personal thing. It's give them a little respect of the word if they want it before we make a decision, and I like to wait till the board is full, especially when we make an appointment to an elected position. I'd rather see the board full when we do it, so I'm glad you came back for it.
Thanks.
I didn't want you to pull out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Regional Economic Development Director Agreement. This is the Hardwick with all of us people.
Yeah, Hardwick, Hubbardston, New Braintree, and Oakham. So, we're looking to basically extend the current agreement for 1 more year. We know we don't have we have enough funding to get us through about a little more than 3/4 of the year. We did appropriate enough funding at the special town, or not special, the annual town meeting to fund that gap, and actually we have a little bit more funded than what we realized what we'd have left over. So I think all the other towns have presented this, basically just a 1-year extension of that same agreement. And then once the grant funding is used up, that the remaining budgetary amounts be assessed based off population. The population counts from the prior year as recorded by their town clerks.
And there's a division of effort towards the town still, right, for hours and things they put.
Right,
towards
and what we're
community.
looking at doing is looking at almost like an hourly breakdown of saying that here's a menu of activities and the number of hours that would be dedicated to that. Each town will be allotted a certain number of hours based off the population breakdown, and so the town could say that, all right, here's a 40-hour type program that we want them, or maybe a 120-hour type program that we want them to focus efforts on specifically for Barre, and then the board, the board of selectmen could tell, basically say for your fiscal year, we want you to focus on this. So we are working on that type of program for the assessment for this fiscal year.
And we've already budgeted and approved at ATM the funds to keep this year going.
Correct.
And
How
that's just the
do-
funds that we're talking about here. We talk about extending a year past that.
No, we're talking about just this 1 year.
Okay.
Because, and the first rendition of the contract was basically that, or the agreement was that this is at no cost to the town.
Right. We were
But we're not
concerned
gonna
about,
lock ourselves.
and we were concerned about the renewal process and the getting out
Right.
process.
We're acknowledging that is gonna cost us a little bit of money toward the end of the year, but we're still willing to push forward one more year on it. And that, in the 3-month period before the end, we'll do a reassessment to see whether or not it makes sense to make that
Right.
next step of being fully funded.
I do recall that. I'm going to reiterate it for public purposes so they understand why we're here. Because the first time we were all balked at it for getting locked in, and we talked about the withdrawing and the no penalty withdrawals we wanted, and the timelines withdrawing. We went through all that, and then we decided it was worth it after our first year to continue, and I think it is worth it. And this is something we've been talking about, is looking at development, and this is certainly going to help us, I think, with that.
Who is the representative on the Auburn Economic Development Committee for the town of Barre?
Myself.
Is it consistent that it's the town administrators for each town?
Yes.
I think that's what we said before.
What have we done in the last 6 months for Barre?
Specific to Barre?
Yes.
We have put together and we're just working on launching, we have a welcome packet for new businesses to post so that way as new businesses come, as people want to start businesses, they have like a 10-step roadmap of who they have to go see and you know, how to go from concept to implementation and what they need to follow to start a business in Barre.
What is the next thing you think we should be using this for?
The next step that I think that we need to work on is, for one, finalize that economic development plan that we had been talking about as far as a chapter in a master plan, but also start using that position as a technical assistance for the planning board to kind of leverage them to say, you know, here's, you know, almost like here's the changes that we should be looking at making in the zoning map to open ourselves up more for commercial development.
Maybe I'm getting things mixed up, but wasn't there a community page or web page where people could advertise their businesses on part of this?
Yeah, so
because that was important.
Yeah, so the Quabbin Country website is up and running now too, and that's basically a regional resource, and that's what a lot of, you know, a good portion of his time goes towards, reaching out to new businesses, existing businesses, getting them onto this website, and then using that as a advertising tool, almost like a it was kind of based off of a ski resort type community, where we're kind of, rather than focusing on one industry, we're taking it to all industries and saying that if you're looking for any resource within the 5-town area, you can find it here, whether it be a specific restaurant, or brewery, or
Like a pinup board for business cards.
Right.
And they're all on there, and you can find what you want.
We've actually submitted this model to the MMA for best practices innovation award. So we'll.
I thought that was a nice piece, but that's the one that stuck with me that they did, and I taught some about the master plan, and I think we talked about that when Charlie was still, and we talked about we have to develop a master plan to have an idea. How can we step forward any direction if we don't know which way we want to go, and really, and we've talked about this summer, we need to have more discussion on what we want as a board to try to do for the town. I know we all have different ideas, and we've said we've got to get them on our agenda soon, and one of these nights we will, so we can get into it more. But
I know it sounded like the planning board, actually maybe it was at the Board of Selectmen meeting, they brought it up, because I saw it on a video. I thought Doug had mentioned that the planning board is talking about pursuing the master plan concept and trying to move forward with it, which is perfect, because it's their jurisdiction, and I'm glad that they're bringing it up, and it's something that they want to look at when they're looking at zoning and everything else, so it's not piecemeal and you hope the pieces of the puzzle fit together later.
that's something we should be involved in with them in that discussion, I would hope. If there's things what we want to try to recommend for business and development, whether it's business retail, or whether it's senior housing, or whether it's years ago this town turned down a trash incinerator plant. Maybe now's the time to look at something like that in the old landfill site. Landfills are closing, incinerators have backup lines for hours for people, but that involves the Board of Health, and that involves the planning board. We need to look at which ways we want to go and make sure these doors are open if we want to pursue them. And that's one of the things I've thought about.
Yeah. And I think we need to pay attention to the meetings they post, so that we don't necessarily have to ask them to add one more meeting to just let us know what's going on, or vice versa. We should start planning on attending their meetings and keeping up based on their own efforts, rather than say, oh, now that you already talked about it yesterday, could you tell me what you're doing today?
Especially when they get to discussing the master plan, we should maybe try to attend as a board. At least to listen, maybe not try to disrupt and talk, but listen as a board and see where they're going.
Right, and from my perspective, this is something that I recognize is their jurisdiction. This is their world according to the state of Massachusetts. It's, the planning board does these things, it's their thing. I think there's even certain state laws that, like, say, that is their
Right.
thing.
And
So
the-
I don't wanna walk on their toes at all, and I don't want them to think that's, just cause we're talking
No,
about it, that's
no,
the
I'm saying-
intent, cause that's not it.
Right, but whatever they establish sort of limits the playing field for us to pursue businesses for the town, development for the town. If we want to start.
That's kind
if
of
we want-
right. We need to
right,
know
so
how
I'm
to
saying
fit in.
We need to go to them and kick some ideas towards them so they have an idea of what we'd like to do and see if they can work with that. Maybe they don't want to. Or maybe they are willing to listen to those thoughts and open some areas up that might happen. So that's why I'm suggesting the meeting, not, oh gosh, please don't interpret as we're trying to tell them what to do.
Right,
But
and
we
that's why I'm saying
will-
it twice.
Our hands are tied to do work within what they have for master plan. But I would hope and believe that if we have ideas we'd like to pursue, that they would be open to that and try to make that fit someplace.
Yeah.
I would hope.
I would have to, and I hear you, but I realized we slipped into a new topic and we shouldn't go much further because it's not on
Yes.
the agenda, so I
Right.
apologize.
And that's why I said
I'm
we
not
need,
trying to cut you
that's why I
off,
said
I'm
we need to
sorry.
get into that discussion
Yeah.
of the things we want to be talking about.
But now that he and I spoke though, if you had something you wanted to say, Dylan, I don't want to keep you out of the conversation.
On the,
It's not fair
on
that
the
way.
topic of the regional agreement.
Yes.
Or this tangent.
Either one, if you had something to
At this
say,
point.
because right now I need to at least give you that chance.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea for us to work with the planning board and hear what they're thinking and present our thoughts and not railroad them.
Yep.
So maybe we
It's-
should,
It's a
reach out to
tangent,
them.
but it's related
Yeah,
because.
reach out to them and see
Okay.
what their timeline is for their master plan.
Okay.
And
Meeting
maybe,
schedule.
maybe see when they'd like to have us come to a meeting to talk about that, instead of just trying to find it.
Yeah. So
See if they would invite us to one when they're gonna discuss it.
I can,
But it's a perfect tangent to this, because that's what this is about. This is about.
this is a piece of that
And
bigger
and he's
picture.
gonna work, I believe he wants to work with them with the master plan as well, and help them with it, or offer whatever aid he can, you know.
Well, that's where Andrew, I think, mentioned,
Right.
kind of like with the zoning, that they've been talking about potentially redoing the zoning map. He had mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the thing we might ask. Barry's portion of these hours to be spent towards moving. If I'm
That's-
correct, that's what you were
Right,
saying
I mean,
earlier a
like
little bit.
looking at, is there areas that are that are zoned as, a residential district that maybe more appropriately be a, business or commercial district, or is there anything in our business and commercial zoning regulations that might be prohibitive toward real business development? So those are just a few things that you can look at.
Okay. Did you have more in the agreement?
Yeah, what of, where are the other 4 towns at in this process? Do we know?
I know that at least 3 of them have discussed and have already voted favorably upon moving forward with it, but I think there's just New Braintree and Hardwick were the last 2 are just waiting for affirmative. Yeah, the board has reviewed it and voted that they would like to continue on it. And I think that there is some language still needs to be added, because as I was going through it, it was before we had all officially decided that the population was gonna be the basis of assessment. So I just noticed that it was blank, that on the copy that you have is a blank line where it says
Right.
the basis of assessment. So,
Page 2, right?
yeah, so as long as that is a condition that you guys would be comfortable with going off of, we would just wait for the other towns to say that they're willing to go with that assessment model before going out with a final agreement.
Just clarifying that. I'd like to see that in writing.
Yep.
Also, on page 2, the very top, section 2A, it references appropriations identified in Appendix A. I'd like to make sure that that is appropriately attached and dated, consistent with the date of the agreement, or something that makes sure that you can easily tie the two together.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't see Appendix A.
Yeah, it's not included, so.
I know,
yeah,
I'm saying,
it's,
I understand his point.
say when this was printed, it was all based off the
Right, way back when it was
email
just a
chain
grant.
discussions of just
Right.
saying, hey, you know, this is the way that we
So
can finish.
when do we really need to get this signed by? There's not a rush in this, or?
No, there's not a rush on it, but
We-
what I want to make sure is that that you guys were in favor of continuing the program, but also the basis of the general basis of assessment of on the population level, so I can get back to the other towns, say that we're in favor and that we can draft the final agreement based off of that.
I'd make a motion, we give approval of this, our support of this, based on what we've discussed, and being billed by the population as discussed.
I second that.
This
And
this is
the,
supporting it, not signing it tonight.
Right,
Sure.
right. The amount we budgeted was based on what we thought our percent population type would be
Right,
for a
yeah.
full fiscal year.
No, based off of what our estimated remaining balance would be in the grant funding. We actually ended
Balance
up
is higher.
having more grant funding. So the assessment cost for this year is around $6,000. At a full clip, you're talking almost about 20.
Okay, so we would be adding
How much should we allocate this year?
14,000 to our budget next year
Correct.
if it maintained approximately the same.
Do we allocate 6 here, or do we allocate 8 this year? Did we allocate?
We allocated 6,000.
Oh, 6, okay, and we're
So-
not gonna need 6, though.
We'll probably need about 55.
Okay,
So-
okay. So about 14 more in the budget to continue.
Right.
Um,
That's why we'll be looking at it, all right, now, in 2021, we'd have to go for another new agreement based off a new budget schedule, assuming that we didn't have any additional grant funding to offset it.
Right, and we'd have to decide by probably March, end of March, if we're gonna go forward again to give 90 days to come out of it. Um, So we still have, time to see how we feel it's working, and
I think it's at 120, but we can make it a recommendation to amend that to 90.
and we had 90 days to withdraw, I thought, but am I reading that wrong?
Oh, yeah, at least 90 days prior to the end of the fiscal year for
Right.
termination.
I thought that's how we did that. So we were trying to give reasonable time to bail out
April
on the
1st,
creation of
March.
this without making no notice to get out, because people
Yep.
need time to adjust budgets, and 90.
I don't know, I think it's 120, but.
The
Oh, the renewal for considered no later than 20. So number D in 1 and B in 5 are inconsistent, so.
The
that has
answer
to
for
change
me
tonight.
is,
Well, the agreement
so
can be.
they want an answer by March 1st, if we're gonna move into FY '21. 120 days prior to
Right.
the contract
Right, they-
expiration.
Right, they want it by February 28th.
Right, but also later on in the agreement, it
It
goes.
says 90 though
90, so
later,
that's
so
April.
I'd say we move it to the.
90
So-
days is to pull out of the agreement.
Mhm.
120 days is to say I'm ready to continue it for the next fiscal year.
Which is, I think, silly to do 2 different numbers.
So we could say that, and then a month later say we're withdrawing from the agreement entirety.
Hence.
So I would suggest talking to them about just making it the same number of days.
Yeah.
And I'd get rid of the
Well, that's what I was
120.
saying, recommend
Yeah.
90 days.
I'd recommend stick with the 90 and keep it shorter. Because, I always tell my kids, if you push me with an answer too soon, I'm not ready for it, the answer's no.
I understand wanting to know the commitment and what you're gonna do about it, but I also understand you don't even know what the school budget is yet.
Right.
And we're already into the fiscal year, so needing a 6-month notice about how many times the government might give you this amount of money. I'm just
Right, no.
revealing my frustrations of the DLS estimated school appropriations. A week later, estimated school, I was like, just vote and be done with it, please. Personal opinion. Okay,
If only it was
I
that
would
easy.
agree then. Let's just,
I'll just recommend that change be made.
make that change, then we make the change to clarify the billing by population and the reference to the appendix A, so it,
Mhm.
then I'm good.
But as far as the support, we're gonna take a vote on supporting it?
Yeah, based on those, so
We had a
I'm just
motion,
waiting,
so
we've got the two
we-
motions, we just continued discussion, so I just gotta
Right.
call for the vote.
Yeah, just making sure we don't trip that part up, that's all.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Sounded like you're getting ready to move on, sorry.
No. Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Special events bylaw.
So, when I first started, I know there was some discussion about the fact that right now, you know, the Board of Selectmen, they require, you know, large-scale events to obtain special permit applications. Now, years, you know, prior, a special event bylaw had gone to town meeting and had been defeated due in part to the ambiguity.
Somebody tabled it, yes.
Right, it was
wasn't
tabled
voted on.
because it wasn't, well, it was, I think some
So-
discussion.
somebody
had said
tabled
was-
it.
Somebody had tabled.
Yes,
So I
it's
kind of.
ambiguous and it stepped on toes of a board that was doing something similar
Right,
at the time.
so I kind of went back to decided, let's go back to square one, let's see if this is something that we want to pursue. I looked at a couple of different models that were out there for towns that did have special event bylaws and tailored one that might be suitable for us. I figured it might be something that, you know, if it was still a priority of the board to get something in place to back special event permits, it might be something to go off of. And then just wanted to put it out for discussion, see if it was something you wanted to do, or maybe if you wanted to just tailor it to your needs to bring back again to town meeting.
I know I would like to take some time to really
Right.
review this, maybe mark it up and then come back for more discussion.
I think what he's asking now is that we support the idea of putting something like this forward, and I for one do. I've said, as you well know, from day one.
I'd like to do it at annual town meeting though, not
Oh,
special.
no.
That's fine, and I don't wanna
Yeah,
give
oh,
us
yeah.
plenty of time
Oh, yeah.
Right.
to do that, so I just
This is definitely an annual.
put together as a base that you guys can go through in the next calendar year and just, you know.
I
work
would,
through.
I would bet the times that we put this on the agenda to discuss, we will have public input.
Yes.
Because this does affect people in many ways, from traffic complaints to, you know, not wanting theirs, to worry about how it's gonna affect other people. I mean, it's gonna have public input, and I think,
One thing I would like to also start with is, and we'll get into this as a board on our general bylaw about this. Depends on the venue. Certain activities can be granted the ability to have events through the planning board and the type of business they start. And at that point, once it's been given, it doesn't require a special permit every time they have an event. Because they have an event venue. You know, that's what they got the permit to do with their property when they said, I'm not saying we have any in town like that yet, but we may wanna work with the planning board on how we would make sure this doesn't overlap something like that. Cause once the planning board does that, it's done. There's no more planning board regulation on it, nor is there Board of Selectmen. The rules are supposed to be defined, this is how you will operate, and then it's public safety and building inspector and fire department that all kind of play a role of, are you still following the rules?
Right, so the way I define, you know, I had it defined in here, a special event, one of the conditions was special events do not include normal town-sponsored programs or activities or regular sporting events or tournaments held inside of a building at a facility qualified as a place of public assembly and intended for that purpose. So that was kind of if you've designed a facility for the use of special events, it doesn't require you to come back to the town every time that you want to hold an event there.
Okay.
and
We gotta be careful how that's worded in case someone identifies huge events down at Felton Field and say, well, it's Felton Field, it's meant for
well,
events.
that's what I was just gonna say. They do horse shows down there, but
But
once
there's a
again,
part like,
that's what.
that's true,
it's for.
that's what it is. We shouldn't have to have everybody come before us. They got the Felton Field Commission that plays a role on how that place is run, and we don't have to visit it every time.
And they have their parking and facilities and everything there that they need, so. But that is something I brought up before, so, well, for example, we don't ask them for a special event permit when they're doing their horse shows, or when they're
For
doing
the
trail
school,
rides.
if they're bringing a regional basketball tournament.
Right, so there's ways to make exceptions to things like that, for those, exactly the facility that has that,
So-
or Little League tournament, or, you know.
So specifically, it was the special event definition was that any one or more of the following factors exist: that a fee is charged or money is collected, alcohol or food will be sold, temporary structures are constructed, a town facility will be closed to the general use by the public, or use by general public will be denied in part or in whole. The location will be used beyond its normal capacity and typical range of uses. The activity on a street or other public place is impacted in a manner which disrupts the normal or usual traffic patterns, regulations, or controls, or that the Board of Selectmen reasonably determines that the event will result in substantial impact on town resources, facilities, or public safety services in response.
Number H, can't put that in because you can only know that retroactively. They have to know our opinion to know if we're going to ask them to apply for a special permit. So
And-
that's where I think we gotta work on how we would word that,
Okay.
but that's, again, we'll review it, make comments,
Right,
and
and
really discuss.
Later on, it does go into cost recovery for unlawful
Wow.
special events. So if one is held without even coming to you, and it's still
But you
had an
can't,
But you can
you
say.
can't retroactively say, you should have known, we would have thought you would have done that if A through G wasn't like applicable, because now you're just basing it on the Board of Selectmen saying, you know, that kind of made a mess, and we didn't write the bylaw well enough.
Right.
You should have known anyway.
What I tried to do is basically say that
But-
the property owner would basically be held liable in the event that they held an event that had a significant impact on public services without notifying the board.
I got you. In other words, if we had to run all our fire trucks down, an ambulance, and all the cops because something happened,
And there may
we
be.
might charge you for everybody showing up at the door.
There may be a number to attach that to for participants where it becomes an issue.
We tried
You know,
that, and
well-
that's so.
Well, for example, the Harding Allen Estate has weddings all the time. They have 200 or 300 people. They don't have special events. It's private property, and that's what their function hall's for, and they have their own ability to handle the cars in the process. So it doesn't impact our town, and that's what their facility is for. You know, so there's an example where it doesn't trip up. You might go someplace else where a restaurant may want to put on some special outdoor menu or something, or a buffet, and suddenly we have 100 cars in the common. That are people coming to some outdoor, you know, eatery event that's not normally done there. So other than just getting a permit from the Board of Health to serve food outside for the day, they're gonna impact the commons where they are. So we need to do something if, you know, to state if there's gonna be parking on the streets, or, I don't know how, but that's a concern for the commons is, you know, when the farm does its races and things, they bus people. So we don't impact the common, we just have the buses going through in a controlled circular loop, and they don't make a tremendous impact on the commons. If you let all those cars come through, it would be a disaster for the small common. So that part, if we determine it's gonna impact it, there's gotta be a way to,
Yeah.
any event that we caught would need to be determined. We can pretty much say what we've done. Anyone that wants to do an event in town with more than 50 people should contact the administrator about a special permit. And that's where this would fit in. The Board of Selectmen reasonably determined that it may result in substantial. We can change that word to may, and that's how we review it in advance. And we tell them, once you have, if you're expecting 50 people, possibly, you've got to come to us and ask for the permit, and then we'll review it and determine if you need one. because sometimes they're just not
Like,
gonna.
even if a family has 50 people come to their house for a family reunion,
It's not an event, that's a private party, it's not open to the public, so that's already. It says a
it's
private.
not likely
It says on private
invitation
property.
only. Those things aren't advertised in such a way you can formally prove it wasn't open to the public.
Generally, if you're having a party at your house for invited guests, that's not gonna
You're
trip.
right, but you can't prove it, is what I mean. So if your neighbor comes back and says, did you expect all these people? And your answer probably is, yeah.
You could say, well, more showed up than I thought would, but it's my family. This is my family, my friend's party.
I know,
It's
and
not
that's
a-
where I think we gotta
it's-
be real
yeah,
careful how
well,
we word it.
I
You're right.
think keep the key open to the public is very different. Just because somebody might show up at your party you don't notice, doesn't mean it's open to the public. And if you're not charging fees to come in, those are very key things. Having fee, selling something. You know, if you have a party at your home and people are bringing, you know, everyone's bringing a dish and you're having a big party, that's
get you.
not selling and doing anything. And that'd be very easily to, I don't want to even consider trying to get into people's parties at their home like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I follow
yeah.
you there.
But in the same means, anybody should be aware, if they have some huge bash at their house and they have 100 cars blocking the road, they're gonna get tripped up because they're gonna tow cars. You can't block the streets.
Andrew, could I ask, or any of you, could I ask, is this inspired by reacting to problems in the past?
Well, I think that the initial establishment of the special event bylaw, or the special event permit process was based off of one particular event that happened. That was a big impact on,
Can't
public
go
safety.
back on the whole gunshot and all of that.
So,
That's my understanding of
The
what led it to.
Cobra Campground's big,
yeah. Right.
Even they
Soiree.
said they didn't expect it to turn out what it did.
and then still, it needed public service, public services, but they were parking in their land, the people were on their land, it was all contained within their property, but it was a little bigger than they were prepared to handle. But other than that, I mean, yeah, that's it, but to go after everybody, no, it's not like we have other issues in town and commons. And it
The other
just,
part is,
they put it through hastily too.
we've been riding a line for a long time about whether we had the right to require this permit process, because there's no bylaw in place. Which I think has been Greg's point,
Right. And
is
I
it's
don't-
not
and
properly
I don't-
defined, and it's not that it shouldn't have a place, it's just,
When it came up at the town meeting, I tabled it. I didn't like it, I didn't like how it was written, it was way too subjective and ambiguous. There was nothing that defined what tripped it, that's why I'm talking about numbers. It was just giving them power and authority to say, as a board, we're gonna make you have a permit, we're not gonna make you have one, we want you to you're gonna do this, this, and this. And we're trying to do something that's reasonable, that why you trip services, why we think you need services. Let all the departments have input to make sure what it may or may not impact. Just something the town can get behind and agree on.
Sure.
And the discussion on the town floor probably went on for a half an hour before I tabled this. And it was not well received, and it was not well prepared. And it would have made a horrible bylaw, the way it was.
and there was a lot of discussions about the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board's roles in this. At
Yes.
that town
Oh,
meeting,
yes, there
like
was.
who's involved and who isn't, and that's the whole point of, well, if the planning board issues something, it's for the life of that parcel.
As
And
we-
that business
right.
as issued.
They have special permitting
And
granting
so that
authority.
was confused with the special permit granting authority of the planning board with the special permit. And then, well, if you're doing a special permit, whose job is it? Is it the planning board or the Board of Selectmen? And there was a whole different discussion on the
And
floor
they
than
very
whether a
seem-
permit should even exist.
They seem to conflict, because special
That's my
permitting is
memory.
different than special permit.
So that's where we gotta work through this and just make sure we're on the same page. So I appreciate this start, it's great, so we can work on it, review it, mark it up.
The opposition.
I would like to continue, if, at a minimum, once a month, revisit this, so we don't let it slip and we don't feel
Yeah.
pressed. And maybe in September or October, we then start sharing it with other boards and get their input, just to make sure we're not
Right, see whether-
crossing over and upsetting the apple cart.
and see how they like what Andy's been doing. We could sort of give the departments a chance to input within a month, and if they don't, then we're gonna go ahead and grant it, because I don't want people getting held up for 4 months in these, which shouldn't happen. We've gotten rid of that. I was never against a special permit. I was against what they had going with it and how poorly it was put together. Then I've been opposing and arguing against us issuing special permits since day one when I sat in this chair, because this doesn't exist. And we needed this to, you know, even when Mr. Stevens comes in, he agrees that I understand why they do it, I understand the need for it, and why they're keeping track of stuff. And nobody's really objected to it, which we're very fortunate about that. But we should do it the right way. What's that?
At least they haven't legally fought us on it.
Right. We should have this, it's for the protection of the town, but it just has to be more thoughtfully put together. When it was brought to town meeting, it was a surprise to everybody. It didn't get here and get discussed 4 or 5 times, or for 6 months like we proposed, 8 months on camera first, you know? It was just dumped on town meeting floor, and people were like, whoa. So,
Understood.
Any more conversation on this?
no.
Thanks again, Andrew. I
Thank you.
appreciate the start on that.
Yep.
It's a great draft to build off of.
Yep, it is.
Discussion on revised school assessment. I'm familiar with what's been going on. Advise me, Andrew, in case I am wrong. We really have nothing to do but wait for the other towns.
Exactly. That's pretty much where we're at. We've passed a number that already meets the threshold of their budget, so if anything, we'll just end up with a surplus no matter what the number is that they pass.
Okay, and our assessment will be reduced even in our budget, correct?
So in order for
If it occurs prior to the tax rate being set.
we would have to go back to town meeting to vote for a lower number to bring it down for that it would still be assessed based off the number that we pass at town meeting.
So it just gets locked into free cash in a way.
Correct.
If that's what happens.
It would be used to offset any negative balances at the end of the year.
So we could do interdepartmental transfers out of that unused portion.
Correct.
Okay. You have any thoughts, Greg?
Nope, it's silly for us to take any action or any vote until they have a final number. There's no use approve their offers every time and wait when the holdout towns reach an agreement, they have a number, then we just can formally approve that number. Or we don't have to.
We don't really have to.
We don't have to approve it, it's already done at meeting, so I don't think we really have to do.
That was the point I was making when we all kind of said we didn't agree with the budget line item, but I didn't want to
Right.
reduce it.
I understood that, but
Because now we don't have to pay for the town meeting specific to this agenda item only.
Right, my concern was just undermining the other towns that were trying to fight for this, that we kind of agreed we'd back them on it, and then, you know,
Yeah.
it's one to have 2 hold out versus 3 or 4 held out, then they get a better chance of revising and bring it down.
And
That
we
was-
did
that
rise
was
that
my-
line, I agree with you.
And I like that line, because I still feel the school has to cut some fat and tighten their belt, rather than just us keep doing every year in all of our other departments. And I know the state puts horrible restrictions on them, and the schools may have to feel some cuts from that at some point before the people will talk to the state and make the state listen. Far too many people are happy with how it goes. The school has enough money, and a lot of people are upset about it. But as long as they keep squeezing it out of the towns and we cut all of our other services, nobody's complaining about the school to the state. And they need to complain to the state about the school and how the school allocates their funds.
Yeah.
And when the school comes up with some more money, I mean, every time the school budget goes up by 2%, ours goes up by 4%, because the state's half doesn't change.
Yeah.
Right? It's as simple as that. But yep, nothing to do.
Any thoughts, sir?
No further comment on this.
All right then. We're in a wait and hold and see how the revised assessments do or do not pass. What was it? New Braintree, Hubbardston, and Hardwick?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so have any of them gone to vote yet again?
I know, they haven't, none of them have held their town.
It takes a little while just to meet the posting requirements,
Hubbardston
right?
passed a number that was the number, not as low as they proposed to us, but they passed a number that worked for them. So
And that was still lower than the assessed,
it
so the
was still
school
low,
had to
right.
go back and
So
start
if the
again.
school does eventually come down to their number, then they wouldn't have to vote either. But
Yeah, because they were
that's-
still at like 6.3%, Hubbard's is like 6 or less. Okay.
So it's
From
possible.
Hubbardston's
It's possible.
view, I meant
Yes.
that percentage.
You know, once you get down to that numbers, you just need one more town to agree. And I think at that number, if their number's met, I think all the towns would agree. So whether
I
they're
think if
gonna
it
get
gets
there.
down to that, Hardwick doesn't have to pay for school this year.
It's-
I'm
yeah,
just
it's-
joking.
it-
No,
The-
I think
the-
what it is they just get no
But-
markup this year. The
But
way it
this is-
lines up, they're
right.
pretty
This
close
is why
to.
the agreement, the assessments beyond the agreement, we really need to look at, because these huge fluctuations, we've taken the hit several years on it like that.
Well, we're gonna get nailed next year because our assessment's due. So our town assessment is due, and that's when all our valuations go up. And all of a sudden, our assessment is what Hubbardston
Yeah.
got this year.
And
I thought that was next year.
It'll be dependent,
it's that in
We'll see how it
students,
plays
the
out.
participation hurts you.
if the student population goes up, because I mean, they're almost a combination of factors where the value went up and the assessment went up. And net
Combination
school
of.
spending is based off of more just value. I think that that's just one of the many factors. And if you asked anybody at the state how they do it, they'd be like, I don't know.
But net school spending, we
yeah.
well exceed, we're about 80% above what we need for net school spending, so we're way out of that, so that the increase shouldn't hurt us, our spending way exceeds it already.
Mhm.
So it's not gonna harm
It's
our
the-
contributions, it's the student participation per town that's really impacting. You know, when someone has 12 seniors graduate in 1 year from their town, someplace like New Braintree, that's a big drop in their population all of a sudden. But if you have 12 new families come in, or 12 new kids come in, that's a huge, less for us, because we have much more, but the impacts when they have a few families change in some of those towns can really impact their budget, I think, unreasonably. There's gotta be a way to just stabilize this budget and maybe come to a collaborative that over the last, 10 years or 15 years of this in place, we can look at our average percentages of the budget and agree to freeze them at a certain number and just say, this is our participation, period. And then everybody has the same service available, we agree on our kind of a participation amount in the school, and then we don't get those fluctuations, it helps us all stabilize. And if
That'd
we-
be nice, but the state won't let us.
No, I think they would, our side.
I think
yeah, sure.
currently until the state fixes their formula, I think there's flow downs that force districts to use certain population numbers as part of that. So you can't do the flat average over 5 years now sets your
No.
So
percentage
I think-
assessed.
I think what the school committee had said, the superintendent said when she was here, that is if these 5 towns get together and we made a vote to do that in any given year, that's the way we do it, but we'd have to vote on that every year.
Okay, maybe that's.
Unless we
Something
rewrote
pretty
the
alternate.
whole the agreement, which would be difficult to pass with the state, we could agree with these towns and sit down each year and do this and go through that practice every year and say, we'd like to propose, we split the budget this way, and all the towns agree to that percentage. But it would have to be an annual thing, which, in some given year, some town might say, well, it sucks for us this year, I don't want to do it, and that ruins it. But we could also do, I don't know if we can do a different vote on that, if it can be a weighted vote or not for that.
yeah, I remember back when I was dealing with a different regional school district, at one time they actually proposed that in order to level out assessment fluctuations, to go off a 3-year average versus a year-to-year average on the student-based population. So I don't know, I mean, that might be something that you'd have to negotiate into the
Right.
revise of the
3-year rolling
a
average.
3-year rolling
Yeah,
average.
so
of
every
assessment.
year
of
you
a
drop
They
one.
never get some big jump.
Right.
Right, that would be even better, because then that big jump just is, a third of it hits, not the whole thing.
Mhm.
That would even stabilize it, 3 or like I said, 5, I mean, something to really stabilize it. A 5-year rolling average, I think, would be great, because it,
I would recommend that we as a board agree to have Andrew communicate, even if it's as simple as an email, to our school committee members with that recommendation. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's their world.
Right.
And people come to us all the time thinking that because we're on camera and we are available, that we are the people to deal with this.
And they think that on everything. I keep saying to people,
And we
there's an elected
can,
committee
but
for that.
generally, I feel it's our obligation to make sure that if that's what people feel, you need to go to your school committee representatives and make sure they understand that's how you feel.
Right, but in this case, this is how we feel.
And that's why we're
And-
asking Andrew if we
and-
agree to vote on that,
and this
to
is the-
send that message over to the
And
school
this is the
committee.
exact thing we can take to that 5-town committee we're gonna form and discuss as a boards that we'd like to do it and just do it for our share. We are allowed, I believe what they told us is we are allowed to make that vote and determine that that's how the assessment will go. It doesn't change, they're gonna assess what they assess, but we can decide how we divvy it up. We have that right, year by year. Not-
I've got to read that agreement, because it being school committee, I have not gotten into it enough to know the details on how that process begins. In other words,
Yeah,
how
I
do you
don't-
bring it up so all towns now agree that this is something that has to be discussed by boards of selectmen or school committees and get to the level of making, proposing a change to the current agreement?
I
How do you
believe-
open that up? And
I believe they covered it for us in that Showdeval covered that in that slide presentation.
she very well may have.
That's
I
why
just
it's,
got to
that's why
read it,
it's, that's
so
why it's
I.
sticking in my head, but yeah, I was more concerned about the numbers, and the numbers they were giving us weren't really the things we were looking for. Although they gave us a better view of how they did their budgeting, it really
I
didn't.
was educated.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I
it was
want
a-
to give her
it was
that
a great
credit. I mean,
presentation.
she presented some information I
She
didn't
did.
realize was available and how to see it more clearly.
Right.
So that was appreciated from my perspective.
I'm not knocking the presentation, it just wasn't exactly what we were targeting that
Yeah.
night that we were wanting, but it did have helpful information, and that's not for the piece we were after that night.
Any more discussion on this particular school assessment for this year?
No, I agree, we asked Andrew to bring it to the school committee.
Thank you, sir. Approval of fuel bid contracts.
So, went out to bid for heating fuel for next year for, number 2 heating oil, propane, and 22X diesel. We have 3 bids. I have that on the last sheet of all the contracts, is the breakdown of all the bid costs. RJ McDonald was the low bidder for all 3 services. The cost did go up slightly, I think about 10 cents per gallon for the prior year on the fixed rate cost.
So he's the only one that put forward a bid.
For number 2
For number
fuel
2.
oil and 22X diesel, but we did receive 3 bids on propane.
Other than his annual cleaning fee being a couple dollars more, his other fees are lower. You know, his price is lower in propane, and he gave us a price in the other two. I'd make a motion, we use RJ McDonald for number 2 fuel oil, propane, and 22X diesel.
Second that motion.
I call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Alrighty, I do now have just a random question. We actually got a proposal from a place out of Kansas.
I believe that's where their corporate
Okay.
is located.
Yeah.
So-
I'm like, Overlook
When
Park,
we-
Kansas.
when we
They're
do
gonna
it-
take care of our propane, no problem.
Yeah, what we do is when we do the bids, we list out combis, and it notifies anybody who's qualified under that scope of services that the bid's available. So
Mm.
they might have just submitted one to throw it against the wall.
Gotcha.
And they might own a sub-company out here, they
Right.
might have standing agreements with local companies for whatever
Mhm.
price, so they can put that in.
Yep.
Would you be able to follow up also, the time comes to see how these compare also to that regional bidding that CMRPC keeps asking us to see if we want to be a part of.
Yeah, no, last year when we
We've
did
generally been
comparison,
lower when we do it,
Yep.
but.
It helps
see
when
if
you
that's
have-
consistent. or
Helps when
not.
you have a local company that does these services.
Well, it
That's-
does, but
it's-
that's.
It's good size as
Kind of
well.
my point is just the old, don't continue to just assume that'll be the case, just check it once in a while and say, yeah,
And
okay, we're
maybe-
still.
Maybe they'd want to get bids from Jim McDonald's.
It's open to them if they like.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he would, you know.
Okay. Do you need me to sign those contracts, or is that something you sign, has?
Yeah, they're over there. They need all three.
There's these 3 lines on it.
Okay. Appointment to Age-Friendly Community Committee.
We were shooting for 5 to 7? Is that what we shooting for, or 7 to 9?
I think we set the,
5, and we've already given 2.
we had, 12, it was a 12 member.
We opened it
Or
at
no,
12?
11, sorry, 11 member committee.
That's what we did?
With a quorum. of
Quorum was
6.
lower, right.
Yeah.
We did a 6 quorum, or did we do, because we talked about that, did you want the higher quorum, or did you want alternate members? I don't remember which way we went, we should
Look
look
at
at
the higher quorum.
Did we go to the high quorum?
Because we wanted a wide range of participation.
Okay then.
Okay.
And
I
it suits
know
more than
because-
just elders, it's also the.
Because I know you had said 9, and I'd said maybe 11, and suggested
age.
maybe 2 be inactive or alternates.
Yeah.
But, and then they had input on it, but I didn't remember exactly how we finished
No,
on
we
it.
just went with a higher quorum number because
Okay.
it was kind of just, for the service of the committee, it didn't make any sense to hold anybody's vote not to count.
Do we want to break these out by individual, or shall I list them by name? Because all of the applications are for the same committee.
What a great job for the clerk. I read all those names.
How would we like to do this motion? I'll let you choose, sir. So you can make the motion for all of those people if you choose, or do it one at a time.
You just need the name, not their address and everything.
Don't forget the social security number. Read it out loud.
Sure, of course.
Shush. What did we do that with? The address for the outside
So
grow.
we don't want to review these, we want
Ugh.
to make a motion to accept,
Yeah.
make a motion to appoint. rather.
Make a motion to appoint the following individuals
Yeah.
for this.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we appoint Karen George, Richard Garapi, Victoria King, Amber McCready, and Ann Melius to the Age Dementia Friendly Community Committee.
I second that motion.
Further discussion?
No.
This puts us at 7, you said?
Yeah,
So we'd have a quorum now?
Yes, to be able
Nice.
to conduct.
Excellent.
I do have one question, and it's not a negative, but so far have, 'cause I don't recognize all of these people by name. Are they all generally older individuals?
No.
Or do we have some, say,
Middle age, I believe.
40 or younger type? I'm just trying to find out if we have younger people interested, because this is supposed to be a age, like, up and down the scale. So I was just curious.
I'm not sure, Richard.
Amber McCready work at the bank.
Yes, I think she's
Younger?
she's younger than me.
She's younger.
Yeah, but she does have 20 years doing something.
And
Yeah.
Karen George is certainly younger than me.
20 years could easily put you in the 40-year age.
Yeah,
So I'm not.
yes, it could.
Right.
Is Victoria King a registered voter in Barre and/or a U.S. citizen?
She goes to my church.
It's just,
Oh, okay.
it's not checked off from the boxes, that's why I asked.
Oh.
I don't know if we can accept it. Don't know if we can. No, I'm just. All right, I have no further discussion. I'm comfortable with everybody here. I do recognize some of the names of people and have met them, but some of them I was still like, ah, man. So, barring any further discussion, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you all, the 5 of you, for asking and participating in this.
And we still have 4 positions available.
Yes, but at least action can begin.
Yes.
By the way, we are still looking for open space and recreation committee members to help fill that out. I think, if we get 1 more, we actually have a quorum to begin with?
I think that we are good to go with a quorum now.
Okay.
I just have to loop back with CMRPC to see when the grant application is open for the DLTA funds.
Do we need those to just update an old one? Do we really need CMR? Although, the only reason I'm asking is if we can get that done, maybe we can get the grant for the next step they talked about of the things that are in that plan.
Typically, I think they put as 2 different grants. One is a planning grant, one's an action grant. So it'll still be 2 different grant programs, and I'm pretty sure that the way that they do it, DCR restructures the way they want them to be completely compiled, just to give you more work to do. So I can at least loop back with them to see where we are.
Because that could also be something our local regional economic development planning guy, because he was actually a local regional planner, not economic development person. That apparently has been his title now.
Mm-hmm.
That was a planning grant that gave him that position at Hardwick. So in other words, it was bigger than economic development.
Right.
He might be able to assist in lieu of using CMRPC and the grant funds, because the next thing we could do with CMRPC could be something else that we actually don't have resources to do. So I'm just thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying go in that direction, but just think about it.
Yeah, I'll make sure that the grant funding is specifically targeted for that program, that it's not going to hinder us in any other way.
Okay.
Did we pick up an applicant after our gentleman came in looking through the trails up on the town farm property?
We did, and we appointed
Nice.
that, we appointed somebody else after.
I mean, did we
that.
pick up from his group? 'Cause we
Yes,
opened someone
because we
from his
had
group.
that one additional person who was also
Is that
appointed
Michael?
to the
Open
the
space.
state, the Ware River watershed.
Oh, right, the one
Yeah.
that took over for Ed.
Yes.
Yeah, who took both of those.
Yes.
Next item is financial policies and procedures.
Yeah, this was just
Oh,
to
fun.
give you guys an update, so, I don't know if you remember, but we had put in for a community compact grant a while ago to help update our policies and procedures. I had done it as like one of the first things that I put in the application, like one of my first things when I got here. Well, a year later, they got back to us that we were awarded the grant, so about 6 months ago, we sat down with members of DLS to kind of go over what our current policies, or mainly what our current procedures are relative to a number of things. And we've been in contact with them for the last 6 months until they finally put together a final document that they sent to us. But going through, there's still some discrepancies with what our, what the policies kind of are to make them appropriate for our use. So we've been meeting as a financial team to just, make them right before bringing them to you guys for review and final adoption. So we're about 3/4 of the way through, and we had gotten the draft policies 2 weeks ago. So the hope is that by next meeting that we should have something in front of you guys.
Thank you. Any selectmen's reports? Would you like to go first, Greg, if you have anything?
Just briefly, something I saw in Andrew's administrative report is something I was going to bring up as the ADA compliance things. That's actually what I'm doing for work now in the town I always work for. They have grant money they acquired for that. And as I'm fumbling through the requirements to try to get, you know, up to speed in what everything should be to make them, you know, compliant. It's amazing how many things, simple things that we're not in order with, like, you know, 1 out of 25 parking spaces handicap accessible, and the first one has to be van accessible. We don't have that here in this building. We should have 2 spaces, 1 van, 1 not. The van accessible requires an 11-foot space with a 5-foot clear zone beside it for unloading, or an 8-foot space, an 8-foot clear zone. Little things like that. And then they get into, you know, we have paddle-style doorknobs, door handles, which are good, but they'll get into curbstones, they'll get into heights of things, and I haven't looked at our restrooms and facilities to see the heights of things. Insulating the pipes under sinks so people with a wheelchair don't get their legs burned from a hot pipe underneath. The signage that's gonna be also Braille compliant now, the location of signage in restroom doors and other doors, the heights of signs. There's a whole scope of things that we just take for granted because we don't think about it because it doesn't apply to us. But if you're a person that's vision impaired and you're looking for a restroom and you're going to the jam side of the door and there's no sign, you don't know where it is. Now it's a guessing game. It's supposed to be right there. You know, unless there's no space, you can go the other side, and lastly, you can go in the door. But everything's, the methodology, to us, what different, we see it. But to someone who can't see it, it's very important that these things are in the right place. For someone to access a restroom, like one of the simple things I had to do is, there's a sanitary napkin dispenser in a unisex bathroom at the police station in Groton. It was 5 feet high. Who in a wheelchair is gonna be able to use that and utilize it? Simple things like that, lowering the height of things, bringing down a mirror height. They got 2 mirrors in their restrooms. Drop one down to a handicap height so you can see it. It's 48 inches high, 49 inches to the bottom. It's supposed to be 40. Simple little things, but the grants available for that, for towns like ours, because it can be a serious impact. They've got, like, I don't know, $60,000 or $70,000 worth of projects. You know, some of it comes into, you know, repaving things and curbings, and the dispatcher window for the public has to be dropped, so they can redo the whole entrance and dispatch.
The city of Worcester's looking to do that now. They're trying to bid just that, all their public counters. They realize they gotta try to find a section they can bring down.
Doing one of those right now, Groton, but that's not a drop down. This is a new one, but it's gonna be compliant when I'm done. It's yeah.
So it's a challenge. So the question, I guess, is,
So Andrew was talking about possibly looking for grants, I believe, and I think that's
Right, yeah, I
what we
mean-
should do.
grants for evaluation or grants for action?
To do a self-evaluation transition plan, because we last did our plan in 2007, and going through it, you know, it kind of hit a lot of the low-hanging fruit stuff, like the establishment of policies and, you know, a few ramps, but I think that the newer regulations are a lot more in depth and kind of go
It
more
came out
into
in
the
2010,
signage
right.
and stuff like that. So I'd like to have a new a self-evaluation transition plan. And actually, when CMRPC is actually kind of doing a lot of the back work for a lot of the towns on it, they put a list out to say who actually has one on file. Even though we have one, according to MOD, we don't have one on file with them. So it'd be beneficial to do a new one than say, oh, hey, by the way, we did one 10 years ago, and here's what it is. And they'd probably look at it and go, well, what did you do?
Right. How much
So-
of that is complete? How much more? Yeah.
Right. So
And they'll give you a wish list too. These are the things you have to do, and it'd be nice to see these
Yeah.
things. And as many as the things you can do are nice. If someone is, if you think of Chris Higgins, who's in a wheelchair, the difference for you and I to walk in a building for him is huge. And there's so many people in this town that are in that position that they shouldn't be losing access to anything because of a disability. And I think as a town, we really should make sure that we are complying. We'll make businesses comply, so we really need to look at ourselves first and make an effort to. Most of these things are not overly expensive to do. Signage is not difficult.
There's a lot of things that are easier to do. Yeah. you're right.
There's some bigger items, and they may take time to set funds aside for, but most of them are, a lot of convenience can be made and accomplished with.
I would recommend that even if we go through it and get the self-evaluation, once we actually have that self-evaluation report or the final result of this, we reach out and call any people from our community and ask them to come in and review it. Because they're gonna tell you the minimums that aren't close enough to what they need. And we can revise that plan also to say, what step further should we go for this purpose?
Like I said, they'll have a wish list when you have
Because, like, I was at a thing for this city of Worcester, they were presenting how they were gonna redo Kelly Square. But they were presenting it to also show how it was gonna be, more accessible for blind people and deaf people, because it's hard for them to figure out how to cross the street in a lot of ways.
It's hard for anybody across the street.
And one of the things the blind people had brought up, it was not specific to the whole thing, but one of the things they brought up was, no blind people know how to read Braille anymore. They don't learn it, they don't care for it, it doesn't work for them. Put Braille all over your building. Maybe 10% of the blind people in the country are still gonna be able to read that. So they're looking for things that are more auditory, things you can hear. So I'm just, you know, it's a different perspective when you talk to the person about, yeah, that's great, book says it, code says it, but it's ineffective because it doesn't actually help the people that you're
Practicality's not
serving.
there, right?
It's old school regulations that just keep trickling down.
There was also.
And that's why I'm saying we'll do that, and then maybe when we get it, we'll try to get some people from the community
I
to
wanna say an
say,
international standard had a circle and a triangle in restroom doors. I don't recall which is which. And if it was a unisex bathroom, it had one inside the other, had both. So it's a raised, physically can feel it in
yeah.
it's not, the Braille, if you've ever looked at Braille, I mean, part of what I've had to do is
Tactile
see,
sensitive.
see how big this is supposed to be in, you know, basically the size of your finger pad right there, you're gonna have 8 symbols. And depending on the order and the size and whatever, I have no clue. But
Yeah.
that's each one is a character. I don't know if that's a word or if it's like, you know, stenography or if it's a letter, I don't know. But I can't feel the difference. I can't imagine how people can with any kind of accuracy, but.
It comes down to, if you have no other way of reading, back in the day, you figured it out, like, you just did it, and you did it, and then eventually you could feel it, but today, there's no patience. I can just open up my app, text to talk, talk to text. I don't need to read my text, which isn't bad. I mean, thank God we've made it to a point that we can help people to that level, but not all people can have that tool.
But yes, I agree, getting input from people who have any kind of disabilities that could benefit from this is very wise. We do something that's useless to them versus do something that's gonna help them.
Even if the book says doing it, that's not gonna help. I would focus over here, like you're saying, yeah, just kinda. All right, that was my comment, but I appreciate you bringing that up. Do you have more on that?
No.
I'm just trying to say I'm done.
No, I'd like us to start moving towards that, because it wasn't until I started doing these projects that I mean, it's horrible that I don't realize this before, but it's not until I start doing the projects, I look at our stuff and go, oh, wow, this is not right. It's gotta be moved on. So I'd like that evaluation to have a timeline.
So there you go.
Working.
Think of a timeline. Next meeting, we'll revisit, and you can tell us if you have a timeline.
Sounds good. I was working today on getting some information over to CMRPC, who's gonna go out and get some quotes from vendors to say, this is what you're looking for at a general price point, and then they were gonna support a grant application to go out for the transition plan to MLD. So that's kind of the.
But I say timeline just because I wanna make
All
sure we
facilities,
keep
or we're
on it.
focusing on a certain number of facilities?
Town facilities.
All town facilities.
Not the infrastructure, such as sidewalks, or
Yes.
only
Should be
sidewalks
at-
at the curb of the facility,
it
but
should
not
be-
throughout the town, I guess is what I'm asking.
Including sidewalks.
It should be that, yeah. That
I was
works.
just curious, because it depends on the cost you're gonna pay someone to do the evaluation in this town.
More
A
than
lot of
any-
driving to say, I looked at all your sidewalks.
Well,
That's why I was asking.
Not really, not
Yeah,
at this point.
mostly our sidewalks are.
Right off the commons.
Yeah, they're really right off the common, and I actually have put in a housing choice grant to look at revamping the sidewalk from Broad Street to Ruggles Lane to make that full ADA accessible from bottom all the way up to the school.
4 to 5 foot wide type or something.
Right, that would be the engineering phase. The the estimated cost for engineering was about $18,000 for that. But I actually,
Engineering slap.
I know.
Cut and paste every block.
It was-
How much are you engineering?
The larger portion of that was them looking at doing an ADA accessible sidewalk from the center of the common all the way to Quabbin, and tying Quabbin all the way up to the center, making that a pedestrian access.
You know, that is something we should look at. I mean, my kids are older now, but, you know, you'd think nothing when the kids, they play track and things. They jog home from school, and it's just a mile.
How's that fit
But
with the complete streets?
That's a busy road.
Because that was something that was
They're
brought up
list-
then.
So they're listed
There's
as
a lot of kids on it.
high priorities on the Complete Streets program. A little further timed out in it, because I had it about 3 years out into the Complete Streets program. But
We're
when
5
I was
years into
going-
that program, right?
They're about 2. Yeah.
3 years out, but we're only 2 years behind.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
pretty much. Although, as I was going through it and looking at what they had as estimated costs for it, I think that the estimated costs were significantly lower than what the real dollar values are. Because just the engineering costs for the design, for all the design work for that, to go from the center of the common to Quabbin was about $100,000. The estimated cost of the work and the Complete Streets program was $400,000. So
they actually think the engineering cost is up,
no, I think that
is equivalent to 25% of the estimated construction?
no, I think that the estimated cost that was used in that when putting together the Complete Streets program was significantly undervalued. I think that you're talking about more of like a $2 to $3 million project to improve the infrastructure.
Sidewalk? For the sidewalk?
To do a revamp of the entire corridor, because
Okay, that makes
doing
more sense.
The whole road, the bike path, the sidewalks.
Because we're supposed to be getting a bike path there too, and we're supposed to, the Complete Streets was the whole works.
You gotta widen that street, so you're probably gonna have to be cutting into hills in places, retaining walls,
It's,
but
pull-offs for handicap, so
Pretty-
if
it's
you're only
pretty
3
hill-
feet wide, you need to create the every 75-foot somewhere for someone to wait for the next guy to get through.
I
But if
think
you-
it's pretty hill-free at least, it's not.
there's a
really
few
hilly.
cuts, I mean, especially around where,
More as you're coming down, is that Walnut?
yeah, where Walwinet comes in,
Mhm.
because there's a few spots where it might be easier to go to the other side, but then you have to create a street crossing. So then it's
Which means
where
you're
the
gonna want
appropriate street crossings
Power and
go.
meter, so you can put a blinking light,
Mhm. And,
according to Complete Streets in the full boat.
right. Yeah, it's just,
It is a busy
involved.
road though, it's a busy road and, I don't know, then if you have access to the common, you wanna have access to Southbury from the school for walking. But I think there's a better tie with the school and the center for community-wise than just school-wise.
right, then you can walk from
I
the
would like to
school all
know
the way
the
to.
closest
Walwinet.
residential section that has a significant density, and that's the one that should get the sidewalks to the school.
The thought would
Not
be.
just the common, because the common's cool up here and the school's
Well-
way down there, well, maybe Stetson Road and getting over to Southbury Road is the best way to get people to the high school than to come from the common. So I'd like to just think about that
Yeah,
is
the thought
all.
would be but my thought in that was that you're connecting now pedestrian-wise, Ruggles Lane with Quabbin. So you could walk from one school to the other if you had a complete set of sidewalks from there to there. But knowing how high that cost is, I would think that once we have those engineering plans, we try to get it onto the TIP program. So that way we try to get some state funding too.
I need better description and understanding of what you mean by tip.
Transportation improvement programs with the state. So it's
Right, but I know people talk about getting on the tip program, but it always sounds like you're talking about doing one project and you hope they agree to it someday. Like, what is the tip program? Like, are you only allowed to put one up at a time and you wait?
you can put all the town's needed infrastructure on it. It's just, it's more like a statewide capital, or almost like a regional capital plan that you need kind of buy-in from all your neighboring towns two that are also on that
Okay.
committee that elevate the program to say, all right, this is a region-wide priority to get on the improvement program, and as funds become available, that kind of moves up, and, you know, some things might no longer be priorities, they might get other funding sources, they might do it through Chapter 90, so it usually takes a while for a project to go from wanting to go on to, till it finally gets funded.
Okay. Thank you. I've heard enough and I figured it was something similar, but I was like, I've never really directly asked, like, okay, what is this?
The number of programs is mind-boggling sometimes, and how they cut off and where they overlap us.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have anything, Dylan?
I have no report today.
Okay. I have no report. Is there anything in the administrator's report you'd like to highlight or not?
Just briefly, still working on the bandstand rehabilitation. I'm waiting for just a quote back from the architectural firm that I noted in here, who's gonna give me a scope of work and an estimated cost. And then at that point, we'll be able to determine how we want to proceed with that. The library roof, it was sent to me that the library does want to move forward with the replacement of the roof fully with their own funds. I had a discussion with Doug and Martin today, kind of like what they were thinking with that. And I guess they're looking at kind of replacing the slate roof with an architectural shingle. But I think it might be beneficial if they come forward and maybe give a better, or maybe have a discussion with you guys, because we have, it is a major capital investment, and we do have the agreement in place that we have a
Right, that seems like a low number to replace that.
Historical building? Is it a registered?
I don't believe it's on the historical register. And if you look, the new roof is an architectural shingle. It's the older section of the roof that still has, that's still a slate roof. And, yeah, I wanna be sure.
So you could get 100 years out of a slate roof. You're gonna get 20 years
Right.
out of a...
20 to 30, probably 30 you should hope for architectural, but you could also look at a metal roof, which can look pretty nice, and they're gonna last you 50 years.
Right, and that might be a matter of putting it out to bid with alternates and seeing what the costs come in at. But I asked that they do the due diligence of finding out exactly what they're looking for.
Right, if 49 is what they can afford, so they're taking the cheaper way out with architectural, they might wanna, let the town, at that point, put some funding into it and get a roof with more longevity, either back with slate, repair the slate, or metal.
Right.
I know slate's expensive, but it does last.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the metal last very well too. That was my concern. So if you didn't bring it up, I wanted to ask about that, because
Okay.
that seems like a low ball number to redo that roof.
Yeah, that's what I felt as well. I feel like, if they're gonna replace a roof that's been there for 100 years, then try to replace it with a roof that's gonna last another 100 years.
Yes.
So, I always want to bring it to your attention and then have maybe a bigger discussion when they do have a more firm plan in place as to what type of roof they want to go forward with.
And we acknowledge it is their building, and if they prefer to go that way, we can't tell them how to go with it, but I would lean towards a better roof that's gonna last longer and have some input. We weren't against funding it before, we were against funding it when we didn't have an ownership or a lease, which we now have.
But this...
Well, I was, I
And
shouldn't
they
say
know
we.
it,
I
and
was.
I'm not... But we're also gonna pay attention to what they're recommending and whether we do believe it's the right
Right.
investment.
Absolutely.
So I know it's their final decision until it gets to our input and how we want to present to the finance committee if we agree or not. So in other words, we could, but we don't want to fight it.
That was in our packet, so we need to acknowledge or read it. I don't think we need to
True.
act
We
on
have
it,
a
but.
gentleman here who does reading stuff.
Mm-hmm. At least everybody can know what it is.
Better, yeah.
Just make sure you read it.
Good luck with the name of what he thinks he's, what he called himself.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either.
Oh, read about the perambulator.
Yes, that's what
my
I-
Selectmen handbook, and I'm very curious as to,
I-
is it every 5 years, every town has to send somebody to walk the boundary? Is that
I
really true?
That is the first time that I have ever heard of that. So I don't know if that's just in their bylaw.
It said it in my book. It's a state
Requires that they have a
State-
perambulator.
every 5 years to.
Is the goal to just verify the markers are there, or that we agree with their locations? Because, quite frankly, I'm not qualified to make that determination. I assume.
Shall I read this
Sure.
letter then? Okay. This letter is marked July 27th, 2019, to the boards of selectmen and their designated perambulators for Rutland's adjoining communities of Hubbardston, Holden, Paxton, Princeton, Ocam, and Barre. Greetings. I am Rutland's Select Board member Jeff Stillings, and I have been designated as Rutland's perambulator for the 2019 Cornerstone Witnessing. To assist me in this operation, I have solicited the dutiful assistance of Rutland's Cub, Boy, and Girl Scout troops, who have been board recognized and commissioned assistants to the town's perambulator. This opportunity became a fun and welcomed learning experience for all.
It's going to you or
I
something?
have therefore compiled a spreadsheet of our results and in some cases the GPS coordinates for the located markers. I ask that you please notify your designated perambulator of these events, and if so interested, advise him or her that I am available to formally witness the designated cornerstones with them. Prior to finalizing a final report for submission between our boards, I wanted to reach out to your perambulator should they wish to further verify any marker. Otherwise, if you are satisfied with the duties performed by our team of scouts, as I am, no further action is requested, and a final report will be heading your way. I can best be reached via email at stillingsjeffrey@gmail.com. Thank you in advance for your attention. Sincerely yours, Jeffrey A. Stillings, Selectman of Town of Rutland.
My question would be, Mr. Perambulator, what did you have to do to qualify for that? Or Miss Perambulator? What did you have to do to get qualified for such an esteemed position? I don't know what it is. I think we should find out.
Someone appointed by the town to go and verify your property bounds of the town. That's generally what I believe it
Every
is. I
5
don't know if
years.
it requires any type of obviously, it does not require a professional land surveyor. But
Well,
my understanding, and
you
I
would- you
think
would
you were getting at it in
benefit from
the
that.
handbook, if I remember right, there is some state law out there where it's the town's duty to go and check your own border, and I think this may be playing a role in it.
I think this is exactly, as far as I can remember, this is exactly what I believe is the law of the land.
so
Yeah.
Every 5 years, you get to check.
So we
I don't
may
know if
want
that
to
means-
check that, because I don't know if there's any results that get filed with anybody.
Okay. I tried to look at anything I had on our municipal systems if we related to perambulators. It doesn't look like we've done
Ever
that in the
done it?
last 5 years.
No, I don't
So-
think Barry's
I've never heard it
done
come up,
this
so.
since Barry was pulled from Rutland.
But I think we might want to,
They were just going to double check our.
I think we may want to verify our borders anyways and see if, reach out to the public, see if anybody has interest in doing this. There's probably a lot of people that have skills with the compass and land navigation, lots of military personnel
Do
and
we
others in
have-
town.
Knowledge of any of our contacts who are kind of heading our Boys and Girl Scouts still? Or who are involved with the Boy Scout,
Not directly, but.
Scout leaders and stuff? I forget who's doing,
Oh.
I know that the Stevens family was
Yeah.
part of them. I know that,
Rogowski's were into it, but they're all.
the Rogowskis were, but Brenda and Ron Rich, I think, were
Richards, yeah.
involved. Back in the day, I think Dennis Fleming was, but I don't think he's any more directly
He was
involved.
too.
But there are people, I just don't know who currently is.
We can try
But
to-
if they're interested, maybe we can connect them with Jeff,
And maybe
and
this-
we can have a Barry and a Rutland Cub Scout group go run out through the woods and find these cornerstones along the Barry Rutland together.
And I would say if you can find a legal definition of what we're supposed to have for a perambulator,
Look up the perambulator.
perambulator.
I think all three of us should look that up,
See what
and
the-
in 2 weeks, come back and figure out what each of us learned.
See what it is that we need to do, and if we need to appoint an
And
official.
Andrew, you can't answer the question until the three of us fail to answer it
This will be
properly.
your quiz for next time.
So if
Yes,
if
exactly.
we have to appoint a perambulator, we should find out what it is we have to do and add it to the books and put it on the calendar and start doing our diligence.
Sounds fun. I wanna tag along.
I kinda wanna go find the
Yeah.
board.
I'm gonna need to stretch and buy some new shoes.
So, how about this?
But if either of you are interested, I would put a motion on the floor for either of you to contact Jeff and feel free to get involved. I would not hold you back.
I'll
no
contact
matter
Jeff.
what.
I think we should all go look at this on our own too and see.
I just
It
don't
sounds
have the time, and
interesting.
in 3 weeks, I'm getting my ACL replaced, so I'm not
So-
walking in the
oh.
woods.
Yeah,
Fun.
I'll contact,
My ankle
Jeffrey
blows up whenever I go
Hastings.
walk in the woods, but I'll do it anyways. It looks like.
Walking's not the problem
it
until
looks
they
like-
replace it, and then I'm supposed to be bedridden for a little
Andrew,
while.
in this letter,
A week
there's
or
a,
something.
The
says it
screws hold it together. but
refers
it-
to a compiled spreadsheet of results. Can you send that to us? Did you actually
I'd
get
love
that?
to if I could find it, because I think that one sheet came in the mail.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's coming.
Yeah.
Well, it's dated recently, isn't it? It's-
July
it's-
27th, yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's coming later, he said, so we won't have it
Oh, it's
yet.
coming, oh, yes.
But I'd be curious, we must have, and probably,
Spreadsheet attached.
maybe the planning board would have it, a designation of where,
I've
we must have
compiled a
border
spreadsheet.
markers at certain points. And somebody must have a list of those, and I would think the
Oh,
planning
it
board
doesn't say
may.
that it's,
Well, we'll get to it.
doesn't say that
Because
it's
once we
attached.
know where they're
It's
supposed to
odd
be,
that you
certainly you
say
can go
that you
find them
have
now.
a spreadsheet
I don't know if I
results,
can
but
get
it's
GPS
not.
nav out of my phone, I
So
probably
you
can.
email them and see if he'll.
I can certainly, I mean, I can get, I
Yeah.
can take a compass and find you anything within 2 feet in the woods. But this would be interesting, this is neat, it's like,
That's
it's an
what I
app
would
course all over
suggest is
again.
If you could ask him to send his draft report,
Okay.
because he says before finalizing a final report for submission between our boards, I wanted to reach out to your perambulator should they wish to further verify any markers.
I assume he's only talking about the
Well,
Barry Rutland.
The
positions,
information
not
you
all
have
of
to
ours.
date would help us know if we want to,
Further verified.
right.
Okay.
Like, I can't really further verify in case, unless I actually know what you've been doing.
Yeah. All right, no problem, let me ask him.
I would imagine they're gonna be formal granite stones with either a pin or
I
a
have-
designation in them. It's gonna be interesting to find out.
It could be it could just be a granite boulder with a divot chipped out of it over and over and over. It's like a drill point. It could be anything.
My son's mother's father, so that my
We're
former
rambling.
father-in-law did benchmarkers,
I would
they did
like-
elevation benchmarkers. I never heard of it before, it's just neat, they used to go around and they did
Mm.
elevation benchmarkers and noted, and it's kinda cool. These
It
things
is.
exist.
I enjoyed surveying my short career in it. It was fun. But then
Motion
in the
to
winter,
adjourn.
I got poison ivy digging into roots that I didn't realize had poison ivy, and that ruined my survey career ever after. Second the motion to adjourn. I guess that's further discussion. Call for vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you much. Have fun. Everybody sleep well.